jab, but there was someone.
Something's changed in the last 20 minutes since I last died.
What was the problem?
That's it. Cool. It's now 1 o'clock and the meeting started being recorded, so we'll get things underway. Welcome everyone to the Ordinary Council meeting of Western District Council for May 2023. Before we move into things, just like to welcome those who are joining us in the crowd today, those that are joining us online, and also the councillors and staff here in the room as well. Before we kick off, I'd just like to acknowledge the significant investment Western Milks has announced this week in a massive new lactoferrin plant worth about $70 million. The first site was turned on that on Tuesday. Pretty significant investment in our community, so well worth noting in this forum. I'll hand over to Councillor Neil to do the karakia.
Ki honore he korea, mongongo ki te punua, makaro pe e. Kinga tangata katoa, aki aki, aki aki. Honour, glory and peace to the land. May good thoughts come for all of us, forever and ever, forever and ever.
No apologies, just noting we have Francois and Helen joining us online. The declaration of interest register is available via Teams, and just a reminder to all councillors to update and fill this out as things change for them personally, but also as each agenda comes out to check the items on there and make sure we have ourselves covered and anything added or those conflicts noted in the meeting. Item 4, no urgent items on the agenda, so we'll move past that one as well. Item number 5, minutes of previous meetings. We're looking to confirm as true and correct the extraordinary council meeting minutes for 12th and 26th of April and the ordinary council meeting minutes of the 27th of April. They've all been circulated. I'll take those as read unless there's any concerns. Looking for a mover and a seconder for those. Councillor Gillett and Councillor Neil, thank you very much. And as per the large yellow text here, I approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed minutes of the extraordinary council meeting of 12 April 2023, the extraordinary council meeting of 26 April 2023, and the ordinary council meeting minutes of 27 April 2023. Moving on to committee minutes to be received, not within various subcommittees, so risk insurance and cycling and walking subcommittees meetings. Looking for a mover and a seconder if there is no issues with those. Councillor Beard, Councillor Beard, thank you very much. Sorry, all in favour of that? And probably just reverse that to the previous one around the extraordinary minutes. Anyone not in favour of that motion passing? All in favour? Cool. Myself. Welcoming Council CEO Simon Basham to talk to the action list.
So good afternoon, Your Worship online, Deputy Mayor and Councillors. I'll run through the action list as carried over from previous council meetings. There's 5 actions currently in action. The review regarding this building, Whakawaitara, 7 houses, still underway. I have been talking recently with the CEO of Heritage New Zealand in terms of the current program of works. He still hasn't, he's still working through funding options for the completion of that work. So I understand he's having a meeting today with parties that be in Wellington for further funding. In regards to the work that we need to do for this building and for Whakawaitara, I've asked for the numbers to be recalculated. The last time we looked at the numbers, it was 2019, and quite a lot has changed since then. So we're working on revising those numbers and ensuring that what we're putting forward when we come to a business case decision, that they actually stack up and are well critiqued. So that work is currently underway. I'm hoping to have that completed over the next short while. We are proposing a second round of workshop for council to go through various options again for further I suppose, redefining of what the direction of travel should carry down, and then hopefully getting in front of council in July as its target of the south. So the racecourse development project, as you know, submissions, another round of engagements underway at the moment. We've had 2 sessions last week, and we have an open session on the 10th of June, which is basically from 8 o'clock in the morning through 8 p.m. at night, where anyone from the public can go and talk to the team there overseeing that work. Better Off funding, there's a report today in terms of the current status of Better Off funding. It suggests that it's removed from the calendar, from the action list, and retained as a standard agenda item ongoing. Footpaths, highlighted last time there were some deficiencies in terms of the work that was done on part of the footpath on Daly, Ford and Morrison Streets. An update from Transportation Manager that only one of the repairs carried out has started to fail, so they've been addressing that with the contractor directly. And tourism infrastructure funding, obviously we had a deadline of 8th of May to complete applications. We have made applications, 5 applications, and they've all been completed. So there was also, going back to point 1, request for costings for works underway or going to be underway for Paki Waitara building. So we still have some water egress issues to deal with. So we're getting quotes underway at the moment. We've got quotes numbers for council to consider. But we have some rotten timber underneath the balcony which needs replacing. Spouting downpipes need to be resolved. Internal guttering, looking at getting that rebutanol. We have some spouting downpipes on the southern side. Some spouting's completely missing altogether, so redoing that. Potentially looking at the skylights and potentially moving those and replacing them with solar tubes for something that's a lot less prone to failure. And replacing one of the doors in the cafeteria, which we've got the door purchased, just installation required. Happy to take questions, Chair.
I'm on the floor of councillors. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, that's through the chair. Just on the footpaths there, Simon, what's the one that sort of failed? What's happening there?
Knowing the detail of what is actually occurring, but I would assume resealing again, whatever the role job. Original scope of work was trying to do.
Thank you.
If I can, just a comment, the Better Off funding one, brilliant to see that that's already on the action list, because that was only brought up at the last meeting, and it's got a report on that, and that's to do with the communities that are now missing out on funding. So really thrilled to see that come forward so quickly and be included on the action list. So thank you for that.
Through the chair, so just be clear, we're going to have costs in front of us. It doesn't mean we're spending, doesn't it?
We're only doing the bare minimum until decisions made. But to ensure we don't want the building to degrade in any way. So it's purely making it insurance watertight, and also that we're capturing the water correctly and guttering and putting it down through the stormwater channels. Very conscious of that. Need to be just determined.
The racecourse development meeting last month, we had a pretty good process outlining the adjacent associates for consultation. I thought it was, however, the implementation hasn't been perhaps quite so good, and we seem to have left people behind. The people, hence there was this a lot of people misinterpreted that the consultation was with invitation only, etc. to targeted groups, which could have been avoided, of course, had we said at the outset, which we were going to, I thought, to say this is the process, we're going to do public meeting for everyone will have a chance to have a say. We're splitting it for logistical purposes. We're going to have targeted consultation with the equine community, etc., the various neighbours, and everyone will have the opportunity in the next round. Instead, consultation got underway, people started yakking about it, and the next thing is went to the wrong end of the stick. I think it could have been avoided.
Can I step in here a minute? Sorry, can I just ask one thing? Can people that are in the room, I don't know whether it's councillors or public, there's a lot of noise coming through, makes it really hard to hear. And can I also ask, please, that all councillors speak up? Because I'm sorry, Councillor Medgewick, but it's very, very hard to hear you talking too. So just from somebody that's on the outside looking in today. But the noise that's coming through from the meeting room is actually quite excessive through here, and it does bar what you can hear. Just getting back to the point that Councillor Medgewick just made, look, there's no way we could have had a meeting with everybody there. It would have been too confrontational. I think that how it's been broken down has been good. It's actually how that was advised and ensuring that we gathered everybody in is where we've found the holes, and the councillors have been working with Joseph and Associates on that and pointing different contacts out to them, and they've been doing everything they can to ensure that nobody is missed out. So with that, we've also got the youth, we've also got the elderly. It's only when you really start these things that you actually see more doors that need to be opened, and Joseph and Associates have been exceptionally responsive to that and willing to ensure we don't miss anybody out. So yes, probably how it was being structured, we needed to go out and explain that. We didn't, and that's something that we've learnt going forward for it to ensure that we do better next time as council.
Noted. Okay. Looking for a mover and a seconder to accept the action list.
Oh, sorry, I've got one more question. As a champion of forever popular ideas, can I just clarify, if we were to just sell the racecourse, what are the hooks in terms of the terms that we got it on? Like if we just sold it today at market value, what would our obligations be based on the terms that it was bestowed to us by the Western Racing Committee or whatever the name was?
So the MOU gave us full right to utilise the course as we see fit. But at the end of the day, they passed the racecourse back to the council for the benefit of the community. That can be interpreted a number of ways. You know, if you sold it, paying down.
So cashing up and paying down debt's pretty beneficial.
Yeah, it's potentially an outcome that council can take. It doesn't bind us to anything other than honouring our agreements to the leases we actually hold with those properties.
Mum gave me $100 for my birthday the other day and then told me what to spend it on, but that sort of goes against the spirit of a gift, doesn't it? You know, if someone gives something to you, it is yours and you're free to do with it what you wish. And I just think based on recent projects that would, you know, that become Carnegie buildings, etc., I just think we just need to get out of Dodge and just sell it possibly. But anyway, just if there's no legal kickback on doing that, I do think that option should be explored in the workshop and discussion.
Through the chair, mate. I think you're going a bit far there. To put this out to the public, I think we've got to wait until the public get back to us and have their view before we start saying what we want. I think you're going a bit far there.
So obviously the target is to have next council meeting the outcomes of the engagement process.
If I may, the problem with the engagement process is you only hear from sort of squeaky wheels, so to speak. The indifferent, by and large, members of the public, it's not worth them taking time out of their day to come out.
We had about 30 organisations represented on Wednesday and Thursday last week. So we did touch point on everyone that was what we would consider as a real key stakeholder in that area and potential future stakeholders as well. June 10 is another opportunity for everyone to come and either have a look at what's been proposed or put their opinions forward as well.
I think it's a slippery road when we start referring to people that are submitting, referring to them as squeaky wheels or lobby groups or anything like that. They're submitting because they've got an interest in it, they might have knowledge about it or whatever, and more than happy, wide range. We're all capable of going out and making sure we get a wide range of views and opinions. So yeah, I think. Simon, is there also the opportunity for submissions to be written in to council?
Yes, there is, through infrastructure. There is an email address provided as part of that consultation. Engagement.
Through the chair, I think the 2 meetings that we did last week were well attended, and there was some confusion in the room at the start of both those meetings, but then through the meetings, I think those become clearer and people asked their questions and satisfied with the answers that they got. And as well, June the 10th is the opportunity for the public to come along, and then obviously there's no decisions made until after that. Yeah.
Anything else from anyone else? Looking for a mover and a seconder.
I'll move the report, please.
Councillor Phelps, Councillor Neal, all in favour? Aye. And result of that be yes. Now we move into the presentation section. Welcome Bruce Watson, President of Western Community Centre Incorporated, the Hokitika Regent Theatre, to give us an update. And I believe there's a presentation that's going to be playing for you as well.
Okay. The Mayor, Deputy Mayor Casson, and Councillors, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you today on behalf of the Regent Theatre, which is run, of course, by Western Community Centre Incorporated. I think you've been pre-circulated with my PowerPoint presentation that we're speaking to today, and there are some of our members here today as well, particularly our Treasurer, Debbie Forbes. There are tricky questions on the financial side of things, pass them across to her, and we've got others here too. And there's a bit of a crossover between the Lions membership and the theatre membership. So what I'm going to be presenting today is in fact the essence of our business plan. We've had a business plan for well over 10 years for the theatre, and as part of the conditions for us getting our annual grant from council, we need to provide the council with a copy of our business plan as well, which we'd hoped to have had before today, but it's not there. So we've got an operative business plan in terms of the work of the management committee, but tying it up so that we can give the CEO a little bit more work there. And when I'm talking in a few minutes about one of the other slides, I'll illustrate sort of decisions we had to go through this week as to whether we worked on the business plan or we worked on painting a theatre or replacing a manager. Okay, so we'll start. As I said, this is the essence of our business plan anyway, which has been very consistent over the last more than 10 years. I'll start with just a brief history of the theatre itself. There used to be a town hall in Hokitika, but it was, well, it looked like a stone building. It was a wooden building, eventually rotted and was taken down. A town hall committee sprung up and intending to build a new town hall, but they didn't have the resources to do so. And when the then commercial, we'll come back to this in a minute. In the meantime, there were two movie theatres in town, Princess down the road here in Sewell Street, and built at the end of 1935 and early 1936, the Regent Theatre. And it was a very successful commercial enterprise for quite a few years until, the advent of TV and a few other things, patronage of the theatre started dropping off, maintenance costs started rising, and the company that owned the theatre put it up for sale. Then the town hall committee purchased it, and so we almost lost to the community at that stage, but fortunately a group of people bought it in 1979 and then ran it successfully for a number of years. Until again, the maintenance costs and dwindling numbers at the movies was put the whole enterprise as a community theatre under threat again. And in fact, in 2006, the then committee advertised in the Sunday papers that the theatre was for sale. That roused the community, the people that wanted to keep the theatre, and to cut a long story short, that decision was overturned. The committee was revitalised, and some of those committee members who were part of that are still on our committee today with a lot of consistency, as well as some fresh blood coming along. And in early 2007, essentially the future of the theatre as a community theatre was secured. And then we started the revitalisation project, and council at that time was particularly helpful in getting us 2 tranches of MPI funding. We got a nice big grant from Lotteries Heritage Fund, and that really got the outside of the theatre waterproofed, re-strengthened, and meant that we could then work on the inside. Even though we got good grants, and we continue to get good grants, since, as you'll hear, volunteers have been a very important part of this, and community support as well. By 2010, we'd completed the essential structural upgrades to the theatre, and a more recent detailed structural assessment rated the theatre at 67% or above. So that strengthening work has brought it at least to 67%. Most of the theatre, in fact, is at 100%. But in 2003, the then committee had strengthened the front of the theatre to then 100%, because the standards changed a bit. That front of the theatre is 67%, and that means the ranking you put on the whole of the theatre is 67%. But it's essentially a reinforced concrete box in one of the safest buildings in town now. That meant we could then turn our attention to re-equipping the theatre. And again, our old equipment, which was run by people like Michael, was really run down. Museum pieces really. So we went straight to digital. One of the first, in fact, I think we were the first community theatre in the country to go to the new digital projection era. And when Avatar came out in December 2010, we had 3D. There were only 13 theatres in the country with 3D. And we had over 5,000 people go through that movie, coming down not just from Greymouth, but from Dunedin, where they didn't have digital or 3D. And so a town of 3,500 that did pretty well. Unfortunately, that got Greymouth on its way with getting 2 theatres, which should have 2 cinemas itself, and hasn't been quite that good since. But our gear is really good, and since we put digital theatre into the main auditorium, we've also got SDI cinema in the Reynolds room as well. We've continued each year with getting grants for various things that we knew needed to complete the refurbishment program, but really it has been a huge step forward. The council approved 2 projects under Better Off funding, one project to work on the building and another to work on the heritage aspects and the story of the building. That money really is the icing on the cake, and as I go through another slide later, you'll see why. Things that we've been wanting to do for well over 10 years, most of those can be able to complete with Better Off funding and other grants that we've either got in hand or expect to get. Next slide, please. Who's operating the slides? Okay. Oh, sorry. Maybe I've come to the wrong one. Oh, she's on it. Okay, good. One of the great things about our business plan is that early on we established some principles by which to operate. And pretty much every significant decision at the theatre is put through, run past these principles in our conservation plan, and that's why the work on the theatre has always been consistently following a standard and well done. So right from the start, we wanted to maximise the region's benefit for the community. I mean, the society owns the theatre on behalf of the whole community. We wanted to make sure that we benefited the community, not just performers and people that wanted to go to the movies, but other users in the community as well. We wanted to improve patronage. Patronage is running right now, and we've done so quite spectacularly, as you'll hear. We wanted to be financially viable. It was never said that we thought the theatre could pay for itself entirely out of its commercial operation. There is no community theatre in the country that does that, full stop. But we did want to be financially viable, so that the mixture of what we earn from our own activities, tenancies, any grants that we might get, including the grant from the council, needs to be viable in the interest of the community and the blood pressure of the committee. We also inherited a conservation plan. It is a grade 2 heritage building, or category 2 heritage building. So we have a conservation plan which guides all the work we do on the building. It's not an accident. Our colour schemes aren't an accident. Our colour schemes are the colours that the architect chose in 1935. And we found examples of those that were copied by Rosine and repainted them in those colours. So there's a real story that goes with that, and that's one of the reasons that people are really interested in the heritage side in the theatre at the moment. So every decision, as I say, is run past the conservation plan principles. We wanted to keep maintenance and replacement of equipment up to date. One of the reasons we almost lost the theatre back in 2006 was because there was a big mural that you'll remember on the wall. People needed repainting, people couldn't work out how to do that. In the meantime, that wall was deteriorating, the water was getting in, it was falling, reinforcing was rusting, it was falling the concrete. And if it had been left much longer, it would have just been totally uneconomic to repair. So we set ourselves a target of making sure we don't get in that situation again. And that's why the repainting of the front of the theatre that you will have seen going on this week, paint there. Actually, it's only a little painting.
Did you just see if it was dry?
Well, that's it. Help clean up some of the mess. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But anyway, that actually hadn't been, it was a wonderful system that we used for sealing the concrete after it was repaired. The paint, we've always used Rosine paint, it's fantastic. And that's got something on it called X200 overshell seal. And even though that's was last painted in 2009, the paint was still in reasonable condition. We wouldn't want to let it go any longer. What you saw, the worst thing you saw there was a whole lot of algae and lichens and things growing on it. Anyway, Paul's paper, Fiona gone. Fiona came along and took a picture of it at the beginning of this week. This is what it looked like on day one. And if you have a look at it now, all that's been repainted. We've left the scaffolding in the middle so that we can work on the steel window. But essentially, that's the job has been done this week. And coming back to the business plan, if I had written a business plan so it was all nice and glossy and in front of you today, that would have been painted this week. Because somebody had to organise it. And as you can see from the weather forecast, you know, it was probably the last week you could have done it this year. Okay, so I should say on the equipment side of things, we've got the latest equipment in there, we've kept it maintained, and again, if it does break down, easy to fix, and there's a good backup system for it. We want to be versatile and flexible in the use of the theatre. I'll just give you one example of how that occurs. Our screen, which in most theatres is fixed, and if you like Greymouth or Westport, they have to have a separate room for presentations and a separate one for movies. And we press a button and that screen goes up in 70 seconds. So we can have live performance of movies on one day. And there's a whole lot of other things that theatre does as well. We can have live screening of Mary's Cup, whatever it might be, from satellites. So that means that we are versatile and flexible and meet huge needs of a huge range of people in the community. However, we still focus on our core uses and we try not to unnecessarily compete with any business in town outside our core areas. The Stapletons are selling food out of there since 1936 for 50 years, and we need to have food there both for theatre customers and to provide an income for us. So we have a contractor in the cafe as well as selling popcorn and soy ourselves. So we would regard that as a core use, but we don't unnecessarily compete with other businesses in town. And I'll mention that in relation to, I'll mention it right now actually. I've got a point there about alcohol. In many theatres around the country, they sell alcohol from morning till night, as an extra fundraiser to make extra money for them. We only sell alcohol on special occasions. And that's certainly partly because we don't want to annoy the hotels in town, because the minute we sell alcohol at night, they're not going to send their guests there, because that's where they make their money as well. But more importantly, we need somewhere in town where parents can let their young people go and know they're not going to end up drinking. And you can think of a way you could have 3 18-year-olds and a 17-year-old buying, or 3 18-year-olds buying some beer as they go up into that dark auditorium and not giving it to the 17-year-old. Well, then you can become the licensee of the theatre. You just can't do it. But anyway, that combination works very well. And it's interesting that when we do have alcohol there, we don't actually sell much anyway. That's for sure. Another thing that's been important to us is to make sure we've got good access for disabled and vision impaired people. So we put a ramp in so that people can get in here in wheelchairs. We've got rails everywhere, and we've just installed a new hard of hearing system where people can put headphones on and get a pure feed off the film. So it'll be helpful. Any of you who've got hearing aids or have difficulty hearing, you'll find that it's going to be a big improvement in the theatre now. We've also replaced all our amps in the last few months, so the quality of sound in the main theatre has just got a lot better. And another principle we set ourselves was to keep the theatre operating while we're doing refurbishments as much as possible. And other than when we had to repaint and fix the roof in the main auditorium, when we had the auditorium scaffolded out for 3 months, we've stuck to that. There's only been a few days ever when we've closed that theatre. And it's been very difficult for the staff. There's a lot of dust everywhere, they've got to clean up before the movie start. But it's really been appreciated by the community who have it continuously operating, even though it's been a strain to do. And you see other buildings around town where, once the work starts, that's it. So, we couldn't have survived, we couldn't survive like that really. And lastly, I want to say that we are committed to our business plan. Those of us in the committee who hope to move on at some time want the vision of the theatre to be sort of carried on. It's not, the vision is relatively simple. As we go through and review, the copy that we're going to present to council, there's very few changes since the last version we gave to council, which I think was probably in 2012. And we are committed to it, not because it's just something that we have to tick the box for. Right, next slide. Next slide, okay. So doing all those things really enhances community wellbeing. And just a few figures there on that next slide. Before COVID, we were heading towards 25,000 visitors per year. This doesn't include the cafe. This is a combination of ticketed events and people that come to things like Anzac Day or school prize givings and things where there's no ticket charge. But we've got the numbers up to about 25,000, and that's in a town of 3,500. A turnover roughly of people coming on an average of 7 visits per year. And we don't know of any other community theatre or town hall in the country where that sort of figure is achieved. Obviously, we're not at 25,000 now because it was a drastic result of COVID. You know, the numbers dropped. At times, of course, for quite long times, we weren't allowed to have anybody in the theatre at all. And even now, you know, things are still recovering, and some people are careful about going in a crowded venue. Anyway, those numbers bring a big economic impact to town, both for visitors who go and also for people who are not going to Greymouth. There would be probably well over 10,000 visits a year to Greymouth if we didn't have a theatre here. And it makes a big difference to organisations like the council, the dairy factory, and DOC and so on, these small employers, to know that to retain their employees and to attract people to town. All the facilities we have here, including the theatre, make a big difference. Improves cultural well-being. We have all the latest movies here. We have live performances by our own people and our visiting shows. As I mentioned, we have there's a big social well-being effect by being able to have community events, and that sense of community you get when there's, you know, 300 people in a crowd. A few weeks' time, there's going to be the AF8 presentation at Civil Defence. Just a fantastic place to present something like the story of, you know, what's happening with, or what might happen with a big earthquake in the safe building. But there's no better presentation venue in town for those sorts of things. And environmentally, it really is, the Christchurch earthquake shook most of the Art Deco theatres down that were remaining in the country, that were still operating as theatres, and scattered around the place, because it's one of the best remaining, you know, Art Deco theatres in the country. And as I said, we take a lot of care in the way that's looked after. Now, that well-being, as I mentioned, is looked after by, next slide please, making sure we repair and maintain the building well. That we complete our program of refurbishment, which is largely going to be done with Better Off funding. That we keep our eye on our equipment and make sure that we've got industry standard but best practice here. And that is backed up in most cases by 24/7 backup teams as well. So if I run into trouble with somebody that can bring it to a serious situation. And lastly, we just need to remain viable and relevant to the community. And we're constantly reviewing what we put on there to make sure that we do. Next slide. So we run our budget in two parts. One is our operational budget, and this is just a very brief summary of it. So each year, Debbie helps us by preparing a detailed budget, you know, which has got whatever it is, 40 or 50 lines running across the month. And that's what we, on our best assessment, intend to try and achieve or better. And the one for this year runs on a turnover of about 326,000. It doesn't include the cafe, it includes the rent from the cafe, but not the cafe operation. And that's more or less a break-even budget. So that's, if all goes to plan, we'll end up with a good year. But who knows what's going to happen with future COVID. And another sort of thing that we've got to deal with is like happened 3 weeks ago, where our manager got an offer she couldn't refuse and resigned. So we're now in the process of Janet Gorn back as acting manager and just looking for a new manager. And there's always an extra cost associated with that because you've got to cover and train new people and so on. Next slide, thank you. So a really important component of our budget is the grant that we get from government. And we are, sorry, I can't get any grant we get from government, I really appreciate it. Particularly the grant that we get from the council via the long-term plan. And I can say it's been such a relief to us not to have to come back every year to ask for, our annual allocation. It takes days and days and days to, do something like that. So we really appreciate that the council has got us in the long-term plan, the base funding of 57,500, which incidentally is 18% of that total turnover. Again, far less than what most councils put into their town halls or community theatres. If we lift that by, let's say, 6% with a CPI, that brings it to 60,950, which is the figure we've got in our budget this year. We need to do a bit of work with Simon and Leslie on the CPI and just how we manage that, and I'll mention that in the last slide as well. But we really can't survive without some sort of CPI adjustment, because, for example, a number of our costs, our wages are 45% of our overall costs, and they've gone up well more than the CPI over the last few years. They're very closely related to the minimum wage, and so every time the minimum wage goes up, effectively our wage budget goes up, rates go up, insurance is going up 10% this year. So a CPI adjustment of 6 or 7% won't actually cover all the increases that we've got. We have to do that out of increased revenue from other sources as well. Right, next slide. So that 60,000 odd still only represents $18 coming from each rate car unit in the Hokitika community. So it's still pretty reasonable, really. And if people had to go to Raymount, for example, to get their fix, the movies or live performance or whatever it might be, it's going to cost them $18 before they get to the Aotearoa, let alone going to McDonald's and tickets and things up the other end. Okay, so how do we achieve all that? Next slide, please. The reason we can do it on that sort of budget is that we get an average of 7,000 hours of community work per year. Of volunteer work per year. Some of that is on the building and equipment, and some of it is on events. If we had to pay somebody $21 an hour or whatever the minimum wage is at the moment to do that, cost us quite a lot. So that's a direct saving, perhaps of $150,000 a year. And if you look for similar theatres to ours, like the Westport one, and there's a few others around the country which are run by councils, they are putting in another 150, over 200,000 usually, over and above what the theatre earns directly in terms of ratepayer money to keep those enterprises going. So for our ratepayers, it's a great deal of it, and that's why we, our volunteers are prepared to do it as well. We all pay rates. And of course, as well as those volunteers, we get money from grants or capital items and from sponsorship. Sponsors at the moment want to remain anonymous, but there were 3 significant sponsors on that painting, the job that we're doing at the moment on the front of the theatre. And Janet's here. Janet's here. She does a great job reporting on the theatre, but she mentions here that Westland Community Centre President Bruce Watson watches his contractors begin washing down the theatre. Well, we have 1 contractor there and 5 volunteers. Okay, good. And that's who's been there all week. If we didn't do it that way, we wouldn't have finished the time. Rob's probably just been home to clean paint off himself, but he was up there until after 12 o'clock. So it's sponsors, people that provide us with grants and volunteers that make the whole thing work. Right, so I've got myself too. So the other part of our budget, of course, is sort of capital and major maintenance items that we're not going to fund out of our normal operational budget. And I've got a list here of what we're doing this year and in the immediate coming future, most of which, as I mentioned, is coming from this year. A significant part of the money for this, when we need money, We put the money into those things which we can't do with volunteers and sponsors. So the 85,000 we got on the maintenance project and the 26,000 on the heritage project through Better Off funding, that will go into things that we generally can't do ourselves with volunteers. So that money will be that 100, or it's up to 130. I can't do the figures myself. The total? Yeah, 130,000. We'll probably get, well over 200,000 dollars worth of work out of that, simply by extending it with other grants, sponsorship, and volunteers. And obviously the priority for us, especially weather-wise, is the exterior maintenance. We've got a bit of interior maintenance we need to do. We have, out of the Lion Foundation, we've just got $40,000 to completely upgrade our amps in the main theatre. And as I mentioned, we've got a new hard of hearing system with 12 sets of really high quality earphones, which you can adjust the individual volumes for, and people that are having trouble hearing, particularly voice, can use those. We've got electrical upgrades going on. We've got, as part of the Heritage Project, cultural and historic lighting upgrades. By the end of the year, we'll be able to light up the front of the theatre, not just to highlight the Art Deco theatres, but to provide different colours. Valentine's Day, you can go there and the front of the theatre will be red, and on Paddy's Day it'll be green, and so on. So we'll have quite a lot of flexibility in the lighting system that will go there. But we'll make sure it's corrosion resistant and going to last. Every time we look at something like that, we go to good gear that's appropriate for the location we're putting it in, because we don't have to come back in 2 years' time to replace it. A big step forward will be a new performance lighting bay, which is being funded out of a grant that Council helped us with. What was that one called? District Economic Stimulus Fund. We had some money sitting away with Development West Coast there until recently, and we've started putting a new lighting bay in the ceiling, which will mean we can get some performance lights a bit further back in the theatre so that we can light the front of the stage properly. That's a huge step forward. We don't have the money for the lights themselves. We'll get that out of other grants, but the important thing is to have that infrastructure in there and built well. We'll have a CCTV system to help us manage the theatre, so that the manager doesn't have to pop up every time he or she hears somebody coming through the door. They'll just look up and see somebody that they need to look after, or they can let go. The other thing we'll be able to do with that, we'll have a talk to council about that, but we can also have the CCTV having a hard look at the statue on the corner, so that if it ever loses its hand again, hopefully we've got the evidence to find the person who got pay for its replacement. We're going to have sign panels throughout the theatre and on the outside telling the story of the theatre. And hopefully the research we do for that will give us the raw material for eventually a short film on the theatre that tells the story, and we can actually charge for people going upstairs and watching this film, having a look at the theatre, looking at the panels and watching that film. We don't have the money for that, but we're making sure that the research we do and the way we look after our archives means that we can move to a film if we get the resources for that. There'll be directional signage that's coming out of Better Off funding as well, so people can find their way around the theatre better. And lastly, this isn't coming out of Better Off funding, but we're going to document our systems well. We've already got good documentation, but it's all over the place. We're going to put in an easily retrievable system, and that will make changes in committee members or changes in staff members or volunteers easy to handle, because they'll just be able to dial into Google Docs or whatever and find the instructions they need for the job. And we'll work with the museum in making sure our archives are properly looked after. And someone the other day rang me up and said, I've got a box of archives from the theatre here, and I got it off them. And the first thing right on top is the original license. Government in those days, cinemas were licensed. The original license, 1935, from government to the theatre for running that theatre. The company report for that year. Fantastic stuff. And as soon as we've got all that stuff organised, we'll go out to the community now, so pictures and movies and things, so we can can really brighten the story up when we tell it. Some of that will inevitably slop over into next year, but we'll get a lot of that done this year. And so that's the essence of our business plan. I just wanted to have a second to last slide. It raises the question of how council can help in all this. Obviously, that annual grant, adjusted by CPI, is just crucial to us. But we would like, in the past, we've had a councillor or councillors who have been nominated by council as to liaise with the theatre, just to keep in touch. We send them the minutes, come to the AGM, come to other meetings if necessary, or for something controversial going along, we can get that person or people along so that one or more councillors has got a really thorough understanding of what's happening in the theatre there. We can only achieve so much out of a listening meeting today, and we would like to invite, already had Mayor Helen along on a conducted tour of the theatre, but we'd like to invite all councillors along, either individually in senior staff or any staff that are either along as individuals or as a group, because you can only get a superficial idea of what the theatre is about as you walk through the public areas. If you get into the belfry, there's all sorts of interesting things there, and I think Helen really enjoyed the visit there. So that's an open invitation. And lastly, there's been a bit of a question over our inflation adjustments. I've had an update from Simon this morning to say that the adjustment is the CPI, so we'll work with Leslie and Simon on getting that in our net. Once we've formally submitted our business plan to the staff, we'll also submit an invoice for this year, including the correct CPI amount. And then tomorrow, before 4 o'clock, we'll have a submission into the annual plan process. It just records the essence of, just gives us standing. So we've had the public hearings on the annual plan. We've got the right to be there. So people put in controversial submissions about the theatre, we can come to the deal in the hearing process. So that's it. Turning to the last slide, just a reminder of the sort of community focus of the theatre. That's the Crocodile Band's centennial. And a sad scene there, of course, is no longer have we got Athol there on all the Crocodile Band visits, but he is in Granger House and still cheerful and wanting to come down to watch Brendan Dugan and the Highwaymen in a couple of weeks' time. So that's it. Thank you very much for probably what's going over time. But I do get enthusiastic about these things.
Thank you very much, Bruce. And just noting your previous slides, Di's written all three of those down, so we'll take those away as action points and come back to you on that. Questions, comments from the councillors?
I just, through the chair, Bruce, does it still cost $3 to go into the movie or not? No. Sixpence. Bruce, look.
Can I make a quick comment on that? There's a limit to how much we can raise our prices.
Yeah.
Because our main income, of course, is from theatre tickets. We get charged 50 or 55% for a new movie of the ticket price. So if we want to get another $2 from everybody going to the pictures, we only get $1 from that. $1 goes back to the distributor. So we're very limited. We've got to watch if we raise the ticket price too much, we'll reduce the numbers of people coming. It's about right at the moment.
Bruce, look, you've certainly done a great job there, and you created a really great culture with the team that you have there. You know, for the hours that they put in there, over 7,000 hours for the year. You know, great effort. Good stuff.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd just like to agree with you, Tanka, and other councillors. I've been around the little ladder up the top, and it's well worth going for a visit. And yeah, the consistency of your committee has been impressive. Yeah, thanks, Bruce.
Oh, just echoing what everyone else has said. Well done, I think that's doing a really good job. And I just, in terms of your patrons and stuff, did you say you managed to turn that decline around, like as your patronage?
Oh, yes, yeah. We had a terrible summer, of course, so fine.
Yeah.
So for movies in the main season, that's not a good thing. But as soon as the weather started deteriorating a bit and we got a colder day, our numbers have come up. So we're, if you look at trends worldwide, it's actually been a bad year for movies generally, and it's generally about the offer that you get, which we don't have any say on. We've got the best, latest movies. Open in New York, they're generally open in the ticket. So
That's also Maverick like 4 times or something like that, I went and saw Maverick like 4 times.
Well, we need more people like you.
Cool, just looking for a mover and a seconder to receive that presentation. Councillor Vernon.
Second that.
Councillor Phelps, a lover of movies. Thank you very much, Bruce. No stranger to this chambers, welcoming Lathan Martin, President of the Hukatua Lions Club, for their presentation. And noting that Bruce has borrowed 15 minutes of their time. Speak fast, please.
Well, kia ora koutou. Thank you to the Mayor for the invitation, and good afternoon, Mayor Lash, Deputy Mayor Casson, Hotini Naito, Chairs Paul and Francois, councillors, senior staff and staff members and members of the public. I'm the President of the Lions Club of Hokitika, and we've got a bit of a presentation to run through this afternoon. By way of background of the Lions Club and the role it plays meeting the 4 well-beings in our community. Next slide, please, Emma. Thank you. So the Lions Club of Hokitika was established in 1965 and has served in Hokitika for over 58 years. It has 2 arms, like humans, has a club function and a trust function. So the club deals with everything that's to do with membership, and the trust deals with everything that's to do with the public, outward facing, and finances raised by the public. Our club looks after our members and makes sure they're happy and healthy and well fed, and we organised social events, and our trust really focuses on our community and how we can add value to the Hokitika community primarily, but also our wider Western community when it's appropriate. Next slide, thank you, Emma. So our global causes, Lions International sets an agenda of the things that Lions clubs all around the world should be focusing on. So hopefully with the clip, a magic image is going to appear. Thanks, Emma. Our first global cause is, Emma, is it all right to press the button, please? There we go, diabetes. So diabetes is an international focus for Lions clubs. Next clip, please. Environment, so we focused on the environment as well. Next, thank you, Emma. Thank you, you've got it. Perfect. Hunger. Hunger is an important international cause. Vision, as in seeing through spectacles and having good eye health, and childhood cancer is another international focus. There is expanding focus areas as well to include youth, disaster relief and humanitarian efforts, and they're in response to a number of international events that we're all quite familiar with, including some of our own in our own backyard and in our country. Next slide, thank you, Emma. So how does Lions Hokitika, the Lions Club of Hokitika, give effect to these international causes? So diabetes, we have Lap the Map every year. It's a new initiative where we Lions challenges clubs to walk the length of the coastline of New Zealand to raise funds for diabetes. Those funds are donated to Diabetes New Zealand and any local branches that exist within communities or individuals that need support in relation to diabetic care or support in any other way if they have diabetes themselves or within their whānau. And we also, as a club, really enjoy inviting guest speakers to our meetings to talk about their diabetes journey and to raise awareness of diabetes. And we partner with anyone that has a similar focus. Next slide, thank you, Emma. Environment in our community is a real focus for us. So some of the things we do are listed here on this slide. They include things like tree planting when we have memorials or special events. There's a number on the West Coast Wilderness Trail that have been planted by our club and supported by our club, and also memorial trees for the Jubilee of Her Majesty the Queen, the passing of the Queen, and the coronation of the King. We also do firewood and kindling, which we kind of gave it a poetic license and slide it into environment, although we're chopping down trees. It hopefully is incentivising the use of sustainable fuel sources like wood. So we do sell firewood and we do sell kindling. And we do that as a fundraiser whereby we receive donated logs, and we've got a great wood team that work together every Tuesday who really have a good time sawing up, ringing and splitting firewood, and then that's sold just a little bit over market value, because what we want to ensure is that we are not undercutting or disrupting local businesses, but people that purchase their wood through us are doing so on the understanding that they're supporting the community, with all those funds and profits returned back to the community. There's a number of art installations, memorials and monuments around this community that have been funded by the Lions Club of Hokitika, or the Lions Club of Hokitika has been involved in installing. We do battery collection, so that includes ranging from batteries that you put in your hearing aids or remotes right through to car batteries, and that's all sold for scrap in partnership with the Western Industrial Heritage Park. So if you've got an old, won't say an old dunger of a car, but if you've got a car battery lying around, give them to Riley, please. He'll pick them up on his mail. Can tabs. So can tabs spelled like that, but they're actually the tabs off the top of aluminium cans. So we collect them, and they're actually used to provide dialysis for people, particularly children that need kidney dialysis. I think one can tab gives something like, it might be even a microsecond of dialysis, but it all adds up. Also collect Nespresso capsules and pass them on to Melissa at Fleur de Lis. We collect old money through a partnership with the Colour Centre in town, Resine, where it's taken away, and if it's of value, it's sold for value. If it's just the minerals or materials within it, it's sold for that or recycled. And we also kind of now, as one of our projects, take on recycling and glass collection, and that's because we have a glass receptacle up at Lazar Park, and obviously glass needs to be sorted. So one of our members here spends a lot of time every week sorting and organising glass into colours, and then delivering that dutifully to the transfer station. So it's an overview of some of our environmental projects. Next slide, please, Emma. Hunger. Okay, so this is an increasing demand in our community to deal with hunger, particularly youth hunger, and I'll explain, and elderly hunger amongst the elderly. So every year for a number of years, we've been running Midwinter Christmas Wish in partnership with the Hokitika Guardian and the Hokitika Eyesight, and where people can nominate kaumātua or elderly people within our community to receive a Midwinter Christmas Wish. It can be a pick-me-up, something nice like chocolate, but also something sustaining like milk or bread has been mixed in as well, and they're really well received. That's free to the recipients and free to nominate. Look out for that, it's coming next month. We also fund and run a community garden at Lazar Park, and we're really proud about partnerships with Hautini, Waiora, Kaipuku and West Street to support the community garden that's there. So you may have seen recently some working bees that have been happening there. That's free. Anyone can go there at any time and help themselves to any of the kai that's in that garden. We also provide We also provide sponsorship to any organisations or groups that are dealing specifically with hunger. So Kite Kai, which is a lunch in schools program that happens discreetly in our community. We're quite willing and happy to fund that financially. And also, until it changed format, we were giving roughly $1,000 a year to our local food bank to use for the purchase of food. And now that has obviously been absorbed into West Street and has changed slightly, but we're still there as a supporter. Next slide, please, Emma. Vision, seeing, spectacles, glasses, eyewear, all of the above. We receive ad hoc requests for financial assistance for people that are needing glasses, and we often grant $250 as a one-off towards those people. We have spectacles in the Western District Library that are checked regularly and they're just made available to anyone that's forgotten their glasses. When they come to read the paper or browse the library books. We also do the same for Great Power. And we also collect from the optometrist, Catherine Van Parson, Western Medical Centre and the pharmacy, any used spectacles or glasses, and they're sent to Ferrymead Lions, the East Coast, which is cleaned, sorted and sent off to the Pacific Islands, where they hopefully can be matched to through prescription to people that genuinely need glasses. Next slide, thanks. Emma. Childhood cancer. We donate every year to Camp Quality, which is a camp that runs at Living Springs in Christchurch for children that are affected by cancer, whether that's themselves or someone in their whānau, as an opportunity to have a bit of respite care away from their everyday. That's really well supported by clubs across our country. We also give financially through by donating to the Cancer Shuttle that operates in Christchurch. So anyone from the West Coast that stays in any of the Cancer Society houses has access to the Cancer Shuttle, free transport to and from any treatment. We give every year to the Child Cancer Foundation, and we also receive and are willing to donate on a case-by-case basis to individuals, children that are living with cancer. Next slide, thank you. Emma. Youth. So one of our increasing focus, we run Lazar Park Hall Playground and Community Garden, which by nature is an asset for our community, but also for the youth of our community. We give financially to the Life Education Trust every year. We support Lions International with peace posters through all of our primary schools. We provide opportunity for enterprise with the Cool Little Market, with a partnership with St Mary's School students, where they're actually running the market stall. One person just keeps coming back, Liam, every week. It's great. We partner with Western District Council to run the Civic and Young Achiever Awards, which recognise outstanding contribution in our community or endeavours like sports, culture, art, etc. We also fund the Western Scholarship, which is for a first-year tertiary student from Hokitika to attend the University of Polytechnic. And we also fund financial donations to every school in our community for use at the end of the year school awards. Next slide, thank you. Emma. Disaster relief. So for us, there's a lot of requests from Lions International to give into a large multinational fund that's held, and that's actually really critical. We're talking tens of millions of dollars that then is returned back to us in New Zealand. So we have supported the Tonga with the volcanic eruption and tsunami relief, Cyclone Gabrielle, disaster relief, and this slightly small picture now shows that our Wild Foods fundraising store, all the funds were split between two causes, one of which was Cyclone Gabrielle Disaster Relief Fund. And it was amazing to see the North Islanders come up and thank us for doing that, but also critical for us, because one day it will be our turn. We have plans and hope to strengthen and utilise Lazar Park Hall for civil defence emergency management, whatever that looks like at the time that it's required. It's imperative that all of our members are trained for first aid, and we fund that first aid training so that in our community, in our day jobs or in our volunteer capacity, we have the ability to support when required. We've also funded the wheelchair taxi van that drives around this community, one of our major projects, obviously able to be utilised in the event of people needing to be moved, and the life buoys that are down on the waterfront, beachfront, have been funded by the Lions Club of Hokitika, and their upkeep is run by us. Next slide, please. Emma. So our local impact, some of our legacy projects. So some of these projects started out very, very small and have grown to a point where they've either needed specific committees of focus or have actually been handed on to people that can run them better and be better focused on them, passionate about them, or because the project is so large, it requires such significant input. So Children's Day in its 12th year started out It was very small and has grown to a very, very large festival that's now run by Hokitika Community Trust, and we partner wherever required to support that amazing event. The Christmas parade is the same. For the last sort of 10 years, it swapped between organisations. It was run by the Lions Club for a long time and grown to be an extremely large Christmas parade. I'm sure you've all been involved in the Christmas parade to some degree. Stafford Cemetery on your agenda today, a proud history involvement with there, thanks to people like Dr. Anna Diesel, QSM, Charlie Coward, and the team that were involved in the work at Stafford Cemetery. The giant Christmas tree that sits outside this building, the Christmas lights that light up this town every year, the wheelchair taxi van that I spoke earlier, $70,000 raised locally in our community and also from Lions International to provide a wheelchair taxi van at the time for one of our members' partners who was dealing with a motor neuron diagnosis. 50th anniversary seat, about $60,000 worth of stone down at the beachfront, large seat that's got our founding members in it, which was unveiled for our 50th anniversary. Lazar Park Hall, playground and community garden, taking, much like the Regent Theatre, an asset that was probably ready to be demolished to, a lot of which was demolished, to an amazing playground and community space that it is now. And thank you to the council for many, many different opportunities and to make that work. So we acknowledge council's contribution in that process. And equipment and function hire, where we provide pro bono or free equipment to a number of community organisations and groups, but also hire it out at a sort of commercial basis to be used for as a fundraiser to then be able to allow us to provide grants to other organisations or individuals. Next slide, please, Emma. So in the last 10 years, we've raised through a number of different ways, grants, fundraising, contributions, just shy of $1 million. So I think that's a real testament to partnerships that exist within this community, opportunities to work together. But for a community organisation that does have 25 core members, I think it's a really large amount of money to be dealing with.
So that's over a decade or per annum?
No, over 10 years. Yeah. So we've actually spent more than we've raised in the last 10 years, but that's because we've had savings and prior to the 10 years. So how we get our income, I've kind of talked about already, but it's grants, fundraising, donations, the hire of the Lazar Park Hall. There's large costs associated with running a hall too, insurance and upkeep, etc. So that is one way we get income. Equipment and function hire, as I spoke about, and then our ever popular firewood and kindling sales. Next slide, please, Emma. So yeah, our finances, we've returned by way of expenditure, grants, donations, financial contributions, over $1 million to our local community and Lions International over the last 10 years. Large portion of that is expenditure on Lazar Park Hall and playground, which we acknowledge also in the income as grants. So, but again, gives you an idea of the impact and kind of the sums that we're dealing with as a group of volunteers. Next slide, thank you, Emma. So all of this culminates to the point now where we actually have over $2.2 million worth of tangible assets. So these are things you can actually pick up. They are real, and they include Lazar Park Hall, although you would need a crane, and physical assets. So it's not a sort of book reflection of assets. They are real, the real assets that over the last decade we have invested in, and are held in trust for the benefit of our community. Next slide, thank you, Emma. Partnering to get the best outcomes. So we value our partners. Here's some of them. Some of you are sitting in the room. We acknowledge you all. This is not an exhaustive list. We'd have to run on about another 15 minutes just to acknowledge all the partners, but we just want to make special mention of the ones that are on the screen. And also the next slide, please, Emma, gives an example of how we partner with one organisation, which is Western High School. So Western High School received free equipment hire from us. They received the use of our Isuzu Alpha truck, i.e. the groundsman drives it around most days. So if you see that driving in a untoward way, it's not a member of the Lions Club, probably. It's someone from Western High School. But they in turn support us every Tuesday with firewood through delivery and stacking, which is a new thing that we haven't been able to offer in the past. So when the truckload's ready, organised by the wood team, and then that means the truckload is not only delivered free of charge or inclusive in the price, to someone in Hokitika, but also the school then follow and stack that wood. So great partnership. And then if we've got any kind of one-off events, we just call them in. And it seems to be working well. Next slide, thank you, Emma. These are some of the words that appeared lots in our funding requests and our correspondence. I just put it on the word cloud so you could see visually some of the things we do. The heart of it really is service, and we serve as our Lions motto. The next few slides are kind of visual as well. So I'm going to talk, but please focus on the screen. And we kind of talk about where there's a need, there is a line. You can see us working on wood splitting at the Tambo, putting new bark at Lazar Park, acknowledging the contribution of Stephanie Knighton, who's completed 40 years as a Lion, receiving life membership in this photo. Next slide, thank you, Emma. Our murals that are about to be unveiled up at Lazar Park, all our wood crew having smoko and doing cutting up some old pines out of Doug Chins that he donated to us, gratefully received. Next slide, thank you, Emma. We like to have fun, and we've got a nice guinea pig crossing sign in the top left-hand corner. We support the Regent Theatre with a number of events. This is some of our team at Rocky Horror Picture Show. We've also got Mia Lash with the recipients of last year's Civic and Young Achievers Award. We've got Councillor Burden presenting Ethel Lawson with his Civic Award in person at Dunedin Hospital at the time, and we've got some of our members in front of their decorated Christmas tree that we did at a Christmas event. It's quite interesting. Next slide, thank you, Emma. Supported and ran a number of things, it feels like, for the Royal Family. It feels like so much has happened in that space in a year, maybe nothing now for a while. We run a market stall at the Cool Little Market. There's sign graphics installing the stuff at Lazar Park. There's some people showing off how they can lift wood at the wood crew, doing the sausage sizzle at the light up of the Christmas tree. And one of the winners of the Christmas tree decoration, which is Destination Western with their Boris tree. Next slide, please. Emma. We help people move if they need it. Our hall decorated, and also some great OSH examples of how to hang Christmas lights. Next slide, thank you, Emma. Painting Lazar Park Hall, weeding the town clock, keeping the gardens around the community tidy, and for some reason, just because we like to say thank you, the opportunity to have a free site at the Wild Foods Festival. Thank you, Destination Western and Western District Council. Great fundraising opportunity for our club. Next slide, thank you, Emma. Wild Little Market that we ran this year outside the Cool Little Market for Wild Foods Festival, trying to take the community with us on that journey, partnering with Potini Ngāi Tahu for Waitangi Day celebrations at Lazar Park Hall, Bouncy Castle that's for hire in our community or use for free at community events, tending to our garden, Paipuku staff in there, doing some planting, and another picture of Rocky Horror Picture Show. Next slide, thank you, Emma. Putting up and taking down the flags that are around our community. You can see some of the enterprise stuff that's happening with the kids from St Mary's serving at the market. We did a Cancer Foundation fundraiser with Wednesday, so our people are wearing yellow wigs. Next slide, thank you, Emma. more pictures to take in. Feels very royal this last 12 months, but we've also planted our bulbs for the Cancer Society as well at Lazar Park. Next slide, thank you, Emma. Should say thank you. We genuinely mean that. We couldn't do this without the partnerships that we have. One of the most critical is the partnership that exists with Western District Council, whether that be through partnering through discussion or with the elected members, the mayor, deputy mayor, or whether it be practically through needing to access staff to achieve outcomes. It is truly appreciated. We look forward to our partnership strengthening as we move forward. I am finishing my 2 years as president, so our change of officers dinner is next month in June, 10th of June. We are inviting everyone that's in the chambers here today to attend that event. There is no success without succession, and we're really lucky to have a really good stream of people wanting to step up into leadership roles within our club. That is in a climate where generally getting volunteers is really hard, and where we see anecdotally and that service groups are folding. So we want to continue moving forward. We want the continued support and backing of our council, and we really want to keep continuing to achieve great things together. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today, and it's appreciated on behalf of our members that are present in the room.
Awesome. Thank you very much to you guys as well. And it's a significant amount of money in the last 10 years you've raised and spent in the community, as well as obviously the time that goes into achieving all those pictures and all the different projects on there. So a massive thank you, I guess, on behalf of us here today and the community for what you've delivered.
Thank you.
Anything pressing?
Can I just follow in with that too? I'd just like to reiterate what you just said, Ashley, that the role that Lions played, I think, is very underestimated and not well known in the wider community. You know, what they contribute and what they do across the field, unquestioning, is incredible. And I think the community owes them a great deal of thanks, because their ability to contribute, their ability to rally, their ability to give is amazing. And it's an absolute credit to our community that we have them. I think some of that comes from the leaderships they've had over the years as well, because the leaderships help to bring in and keep the support that's there. But I, for one, thank you very much, Latham, for your input to Lions. You lead by example, as does Councillor Burden and all the other members of the Lions group. And you guys are a credit to Western, but also a credit to the Lions Foundation. So thank you.
Thank you, Nilesh.
Anything pressing from the floor? Otherwise, we'll
Likewise.
move on.
Yeah, I'll go.
For a mover and seconder, Councillor Newell, Councillor Davidson, and we'll resolve that is received by council. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Search and Rescue is up next. Senior Sergeant Mark Kirkwood, the Area Prevention Manager and OC of Search and Rescue. Please. Welcome. And email and your presentation as well, I believe.
Okay, it comes up on the screen. Is that okay to carry on?
Yeah.
So my name's Mark Kirk. I'm the Area Prevention Manager for West Coast Police. So my normal role is I look after the police response for family harm, road policing. I do most of the planned events, suicide prevention, and I tend to get involved with the odd weather event we have here on the coast. Before I was a police officer, I was in the New Zealand Army as a platoon sergeant. And I've been in the police forces for 35 years. Next slide, please. For the intro to Unbreathed Rain. Can you run the YouTube clip or not? If anyone has any questions anytime, just sing up. Try my best to answer them. Please. Hopefully you can hear it. slide. Has anyone here got any idea how many search and rescue jobs we get each year in the West Coast?
A lot.
260, roughly. Most of them are which are on South Westland. We get all manner of, if we can put on the next slide, wherever, there's a whole bunch of slides, so whoever's running the slideshow. Oh, right. So we get called for anything from hunters that are overdue, trappers that are overdue, people who have set off their beacon, anything to do with underground. And our area of responsibility is Arthur's Pass to the Gates of Past to the Heafy Hut past, up past Caramel. And we have 8 landside groups. We have Alpine Cliff Rescue, surf lifesaving groups up and down the coast, but we'll go through it. So Landsar, very active group here in Hokitika, a very active group in South Westland Different House. They also run the dog teams. There's a very well-known dog handler here, Duncan Hamilton. He's probably saved more lives than most people who run Saros. I know for a fact he's saved 10 lives just by himself with his dog in the last, dogs in the last few years. They always have to have a person that accompanies them, and they're the people that always try to send in first before field teams. Into the wind, using the catapult winds, always trying to go into the wind, so we're able to redeploy sometimes in the afternoon to get our best chance of finding people. So, Landsar, they meet normally once a month. We meet at St Mary's Hall here. Like I said, you got any questions along the way, sing out. I'm not asking for anything, just an info thing. I'm not going to ask for money. That's all. And so they run up and down the west coast. If we require Landsar, we contact them, normally that's 3 or 4 names per group, and we call them and they do a phone tree thing. Then we find out how many people we have available, and we'll task them to with a certain incident. Police run the incidents always, police are always the incident controller for land-based searches, and out to 12 nautical miles when there's a marine incident. Police are always the incident controller for legislation. But if, for example, it's a cave job, we'll often have the operations manager as the cave expert. Or if it's a marine incident, we'll have a marine expert as the operations. But the police officers are always the incident control. So Cave SAR's based out of Rananga, and they have a group of people that often they get called for dogs and mine shafts. They've had a few jobs like that over the years, and they spend a lot of time at Charleston up the caves up there. And there's a group of 12 of them, and they always turn up wearing freezing rookie gumboots so they can slip the boots out of their feet out. They get stuck in a hole or whatever else. They don't wear shoes, boots or anything. They always wear freezing rookie gumboots. And they go in places there's no way you'd ever get smeared. So Coast Guard, we have a Coast Guard unit here, and in one Lake Runner. They operate out to 12 nautical miles and further if need be. The way they get activated is often a EPIRB notification from a boat, or someone rings up and says, I've got an issue with a boat or whatever. And people will join, subscribe to a Coast Guard so that if they have an issue with their boat and they need a tow, they contact Coast Guard and they get towed in. Otherwise, if they have to pay, it's like the AA with cars, it costs a lot more money. If you find a need, you're paying like 3 times the price.
Normally for the Coast Guard, is it recreational or fishing?
Very seldom fishing companies. Here it's marine jobs. West Coast, I'll be honest, don't tend to have a good outcome. They're normally someone's flown or deceased or whatever. But most times the Coast Guard are called, it's normally for a retrieval, or if occasionally we have, sometimes we have good rescues, sometimes it's normally the person's already deceased by the time we've been called.
Is it usually they've got into problems because of weather or equipment
or faulty equipment? The Coast Guard did a tow a couple of years ago where the person's boat was nowhere near up to the West Coast and they needed to tow the thing in. People with good gear, they don't tend to run them into too many problems, but it's the Coast Guard unit here it's quite a new unit with new equipment. They've got 2 qualified skippers, Jane and Paul Wheeler. One of them is the deputy principal of school in town, and the Paul Wheeler's an ex-British Bobby, and now they get me, and they've got some good people. Have a few cops in there too. Not saying that's great. No, that's right. So Surf Rescue got 3 units up and down West Coast. They, as you know, Surf Rescue was heavily involved in the Emily Rangi death a few years ago, 3 years ago, with the 9-year-old girl that went with off the Hokitika River. They pushed them in, some of them got injured in response. They have 2 IRBs in Greymouth, one in Buller, and we're trying to get one sent here. And the Greymouth Surf Rescue were the driving force of the MLFB project, which is now national, where if we get a call for a person in the water, we turn up with this device, can throw it in the water, and then we know where to search from the time difference of when the person went in the water and the time difference we arrived. So if it's 20 minutes or half an hour in front, we throw this in, so we know to search 20 minutes in front of that object that's floating along. A couple of weeks ago, we had a demonstration of the jet-propelled life ring, where you throw this in the water and you use it like an Xbox, and you can fly the thing to wherever the person is. They can grab it and then bring them to the shore, and the thing will talk to you, so you can talk from where you are up to 500 metres away, and you can talk to the person that's hanging on to this device. There was a gentleman here on Friday last week who was walking his dog, got swept out to sea. If we had that device, we would have deployed it. So luckily, he managed to get back into the lakes and well, really lucky man.
Pretty lucky, all right, the high seas.
Yeah, I was walking my dog at the same time on the south side of the beach, and I walked out for about 2 minutes, but it's about last night 2 minutes. The dog was getting pelted by the sand anyway, but yeah, no, he's a lucky guy. Yes, but so Surf Rescue, we also use them for our incident management team to give them exposure on how to deploy teams, because that's basically we want them to be able to operate in a time of less stress than when the job's happening right now. Because you get home, your blood pressure's going 70 like normal, get a job where people's lives on line, the decisions you make there and then could mean the difference between them living and dying. So, it elevates quite substantially, quite quickly. Yep, next slide, please. Up on Cross Rescue is run by a guy called Marius Braun from Fox Glacier. He runs Fox Glacier Guides. Extremely experienced search operator. When I'm thinking of an operation and if I think I need some advice or I want to run something by a person, I ring him. He's my first person I ring up and down the West Coast. He is extremely experienced and a great guy. They they're well above the tree line and they've saved numerous lives. They won the Gold Star Award 2013 for the Amazing Rescue, and they go places like there's no way I'll go over there. But what happens is if there's a we know where our incident is with the person, we'll send them in. If they are the only ones that can uplift the person, they uplift normally the deceased and bring them out and we get that and a lot of photographs and that sort of thing. Swiftwater Rescue's based out of basically Hokitika. Justin Venables is one of the main people. Keith Riley from Castle Hill runs it. They have people up and down the whole west coast that love mucking around in boats. And we use them for the McInerney search with Arthur, the guy that was mustering cattle, and it was them that recovered him. They are extremely proficient. They go up the water socially to recreate, and they're good much. But so we give them a task and they go and do it. They all do the same. They all have great gear. And for example, at the McInerney search, there was quite a large substantial group of locals who said, "Oh, I know some guy off a boat that's somewhere, lives nearby or whatever." The Swiftwater Rescue team turn up in the vehicle, all looking the same gear and the way we are. That was their philosophy. They certainly know what they're doing. We're extremely lucky on the west coast with the people that we've got available.
I was just thinking at like each of these headings.
Yeah.
I know I can think off the top of my head of heaps of people that are experts in those fields, and we must be well supplied compared to other regions.
And concentrated in
all volunteers. We pay for their kilometres, and we supply them food, batteries, gas canisters. If we know we've got an operation, we go to the duck in, make sure they've got a good lunch. We try to look after them, but they go into places that are risky. We do a really good risk assessment on environments in consultation with them a lot. And if they say, nah, we don't try to send, that's okay. We rely on their word a lot. If they're not happy to go into, we don't try to push them. We're all volunteers. A lot of them come from the Western Milk, and employers are really good at mucking around with their rosters. Probably they don't know that. Anyway, so. You got a question?
I was just going to say, what's the split of the times that you need to send in ground crew versus being able to send in Westpac rescue and this sort of stuff?
So there's next slide is the about the rescue choppers. But basically, I'll show you how or inform you who calls us and how they call us. And how they get before us. Next slide, please. So rescue aircraft, the way the rescue chopper gets dispatched is someone either rings 111 and says this person's in the water. Rescue chopper, we'll ring the rescue chopper directly, and then the job goes through air desk, and then they get run from another means as well. But we'll try to save those few minutes to dispatch the rescue chopper, or they get dispatched by a beacon. So someone sets up a beacon wherever. Rescue chopper is always the first thing to go. And last year, for example, there was 3 times where the rescue chopper couldn't go in. So our practice is, I get notified, or whoever's on call, we'll get notified of a beacon drop, and we'll let the nearest Landsar or specialist unit know how you've got SAR drop in your patch. And normally the rescue chopper goes, picks up or remedies the situation, and lets us know on the way back. But last year was 3 times where we had to send in ground. One of them was it was 2 years ago. The reception was quite a well-known photograph of a helicopter coming into the Landsar group, calling these people out. And that's, they walk in the middle of the night. I run about midnight to walk in 4 degrees and weather, and they walk in, no worries, and come to people, people cry when they get rescued. And because they know they're in a position that isn't comfortable, and they feel safe. So the emotions that have been holding under the carpet, as a word, get pulled up. That's all. New Zealand Police, there's 9 of us trained in search and rescue on the West Coast. I'm the SAR manager. I'm the only qualified SAR manager at the moment in Tasman. You do a bunch of courses, and on the SAR manager's course you get stuck in the pump, but
That's the rule. We're all volunteers, we don't get, you pay a little bit extra, but not say allowance, but we're all volunteers and you'll get it. Yeah, so it's news for a lot of people that actually police are always in control. When it comes to something like a civil defence type situation, civil defence will task us and then we'll choose the best resource from what we've got to use it in conjunction with other rescue services. So, yeah. So that's the way it works. The city will task us and then we will go and do the task, prioritising. All right, so the next one. Please, next slide. Kenyan SAR is also the Swiftwater Rescue Team. That photograph there is what last year there was a job in the Milford Sound area where a tramper he walked up a hill, slid down into the creek, and he was found a couple of metres down by the Kenyan SAR team, so they had to call the dive squad from Wellington, who flew down from Wellington, takes lots of days, and this Kenyan SAR can't do a retrieval if it's someone underwater. They have to get dive squad to do it. Yeah, so Keith Riley from the Swiftwater also runs Kenyan SAR. Kenyan SAR were responsible for finding Marnie Shepherd, which was up at Otira a couple of years ago, and also Stephanie Simpson from Brewster Hut, SAR job that was 2020. So they're down here under a rock. Mines Rescue's run out of Rananga, and you'll know about Mines Rescue. So they have pre-plans for the Otira Tunnel, and they have a bunch of volunteers up and down the west coast who are available for any mine type rescues, which police would be answer control for one of those as well. Yeah. So Trev Watson's the guy who's about this tall and about that wide.
He looks like a common.
Yeah, he looks like a cop. If you thought of someone that could swing a coal shovel real fast, Trev Watson would be your guy. And there's the train driver here, Scott Jeffries, he's a Mines Rescue. I don't know if you know Scott, but he's Linky South African. Yeah, so there's a bunch of volunteers from up and down the coast doing the Mines Rescue. Yep. Slide, please. We use USAR on occasion for their drone ability. You can dump them on a hill in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night and they'll do a great job looking lost people using that thermal drone. Police also have the same ability, and they would be very well utilised in the event of a AF8 disaster. The NZDF, we use them for their helicopter ability on occasion, not that often, because it's any idea how much that helicopter costs per hour? Anyone?
More than 10K.
Yeah, keep going. About 35k an hour to run that thing. Yeah, well, but it can hold 12 people fully kitted up with all this stuff. So you can move a lot of people very quickly in that. And then always got to wear your post. Yeah, so we use NZDF if we need, tents or then we come along into a big operation and cook for us and that sort of thing. AREC is the amateur radio, and there's some people up and down in Tasman that are very good at running communication devices. We have one guy in Westport who we use a lot, and we can use HF, go straight from that top and transcribes it so we can see what it is, so there's no ambiguity. It's quite an easy system, and we occasionally use GIS. I went looking for a guy called Christian Tormark who was trying to regularly try 3 times to find him, have been unable to find him, but GIS overlaid all the track logs that we had to find blank spots, and that's what we searched for on those.
Is it government helicopter, is it?
Huh?
Is it a government helicopter?
Yeah, the national is the.
Right, next slide, please. So Eddie, of course, that one on the right is actually a real job, and people putting help on clearing to get and attract attention. So people either call Triple One, they come to a police station and report their partner missing. Most of our jobs on the Sunday afternoon, strangely enough, when they're a couple of hours overdue. And some of the information we get is he was hunting up the Whitcomb, Hendy. What day they due out? I think it was yesterday, and that's the environment. That's really nice. Keeps the old brain going. Or someone sets up a beacon. So you have a couple of types. You've got the PLB, which will give your location, and it also has a tracking function. So people, we tell people to stay where they are. We manage to get a message to them, but they go walking, but it's got a tracking ability, so we can track it. We've got a handheld tracker if we have to walk onto it, or a helicopter can go straight onto it. In reach, it goes to America, via Canberra to Wellington, and you can send a text on it. In reach it also has live tracking, so we can actually, if someone has given an off-site person their access, we can actually see where they are from their GPS. So, my partner once, I use an inReach go hunting, but and she texted me in the middle of nowhere at the Karangarua River and said, you've been at that spot for a while, what's going on? I'm just trying to get across the creek, thanks for that. Yeah, then go across and, okay. But so inReach, you can not only send a emergency notification, but you can also send a text, what's wrong, we're broken leg or whatever. Occasionally get one of them. And with the new, for example, the new iPhones, we have the odd call where, because it's got crash detection on it, someone's jet skiing. What happened in Lake Brunner, the guy was jet skiing, and because of the dunk, it sends a 111 call, and it says on the near help. So we occasionally get things like that. We tell people to disable them, but most of the people don't. Yep, next one. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I've mentioned that. Of course, 111 or, so what we do when someone contacts us is we do a search of urgency. The person, that sometimes is very obvious, we need to send people now, or take into account terrain, their ability, the intentions that they've got, the gear that they've got, and then we figure out the best response for that person. It may be that we wait until the next day, but our theory is if in doubt we go. So we'll often leave the response or the risk assessment. We'll advise the teams what the risk assessment is, but if they think it's a bit dodgy going up the sticks and it's thigh deep in water, they'll pull out, but that's not very often. And then we will maintain our comms with them the whole time. And in the meantime, we'll looking for the next operation, the next operational period. So it's not, we don't always rely on that one group. We always have others coming in. Next slide. Normally when someone or something goes pear-shaped, it's because it's not normally just one thing, it's normally a few things, like they've got rubbish gear, or to check the weather forecast, and there might be rubbish this weekend, but it's generally weekend they've got off, so I'm going hunting anyway, so they go out further. That's quite common. Hunters don't tend to wait till it's Tuesday when it's a nice day. If it's Friday to Sunday they got off, that's the days they'll go. It basically has to be a red rain warning before they won't go, and their partners tell them not to. And some other gear that some people use is somewhat interesting, and some of the intentions is some of the really good ones, which makes our job easier. Some don't. They don't fill on a hut box. That makes it really hard. People don't fill on a hut box. So one of the first things we do may wonder, so how do you actually go about doing a land search? We go for the obvious stuff first, find out where the car was, closest to last known point, trying to find the direction of travel, and we go for the huts, we go for the tracks, then we go spur lines, creeks, go for the obvious stuff first. Hunters don't tend to go around creeks too much, but they tend to be in the middle between spur lines and creeks, you know, on those flat plateaus during the raw, especially here. Whereas trampers tend to stick to the track. So we analyse what they, talking to the family and whatever, what they normally act like in certain circumstances. So are they risk-takers, are they like going to high points to take photographs? That stuff is absolutely crucial. Where do you think are the worst type of people to try and find? So, soldiers and cops, because they don't want to be found out and they can't sit around. So they'll push it. They're quite hard to find, they're quite hard to search for. You may think that quite a few of the people who go to the tourist night, they're locals, and they some think that they know better. But when you go out to the backcountry a lot, sooner or later you're going to be faced with something that chances are will go one or the other, either way. Because if you go out there at other times, you will come across something sooner or later that may cause you an issue. But yeah, so we're available 24 hours a day and 365 days a year. And one of the few places that actually we don't want repeat customer. But if we get a job where we go back to the same place twice, we'll go to look. One of us will go for a look and have a look. We work quite closely with Doc to see if there's something wrong with the signage or track. So we actually want information from you.
Any questions or anything? Yeah, just a question is that you talked about the price of a vehicle an hour. So in terms of search and rescue, who pays?
My boss. It depends. If it's a big RCC pay, like if we're doing a search and rescue of, and we find a person, as soon as they touch a helicopter, it's ACC. So I quite like it. That's the thing. But if it's a person overdue, we're going to do hut checks and we find the person alive, whatever, comes out of police budget. So, yeah, we've got to be very conscientious how we spend money. Yes.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mark. And quite fitting to hear the fire siren go and see one of our staff run onto another volunteer service at the same time. Nice to hear around the Hoki getting a boat to hopefully cause a bit of protection along those ways.
Yeah, those life rings, they're 15k each. We've raised 8k so far for one of them. Yeah, so we're going around places asking for money. Well, not me, but other people. Thanks.
Awesome. So moving us to the presentation. Councillor Phelps, Councillor Pearce, and we just need to resolve to continue over the 2-hour mark team. So if someone can move and second the resolution here, Councillor Gurdon, Councillor Davidson, and we'll continue through until the presentations are done and then break for a very quick cup of tea. Welcoming Inspector Jacqueline Corner, Area Commander of West Coast, to speak around police future planning.
Fortunately, I don't have a presentation for you, so I'm not going to probably take very long. Helen invited me to speak. I was a bit surprised when the topic was around future proofing of policing for South Westland. So I really didn't know if you wanted to just have a conversation with me or ask around some certain things that you may be worried or concerned about. I've got Sergeant Nerida Manson here as well, so she's obviously the officer in charge of Hokitika and the South Westland stations. So yeah, open to questions. Or Helen?
I'm quite happy to kick it off, and thanks, Jackie and Nerida, for coming along. We did this when I was on council once before. We invited the police to come in and speak to us, and just to give us sort of an indication of what the plans are for management of our key areas dotted down through South Westland in the forthcoming sort of several years. There's always that speculation or concern that we're going to lose police representation in certain areas. That's been going in all the 30 years I've been in South Westland. But it's just nice to know what the planning aspect is for that going forward. I know we've had involvement regarding Seaview, and it'd just be nice to touch on that as far as whether the problems there are resolved or still ongoing. And if there's any sort of community type issues that you're experiencing at the moment that we should be aware of, or we need to factor in. I know we've always got sort of ongoing drug issues out there, and it's always good for us to actually understand what they are and how serious they are, because that has another flip side as far as potential crime, mental health issues, etc. And then the other thing I'd sort of like to briefly touch on is gangs. I've had this discussion with the police before and with different people within the community and wider community. I think it was with Nerida I had that conversation with, or it might have been you, Jackie, the concept of making the CBD sort of a gang-free area. Then you've got the concern of the business owners worried about intimidation. So whether that stance is taken to a further outpost, or whether we start a conversation about it, whether we entertain that concept or what. At the moment, we've got a light penetration of gangs in the region, and we don't want them here. We don't want the baggage that goes with them. So it would be good to have that discussion with you too on, your guidance, your perspective on that, and your guidance going forward on that as well. So I'll throw it back to you, Jackie.
Not much. No, that's all right. So firstly, I suppose in relation to the first thing that you spoke about, being whether it's future-proofing or the removal of police rather than adding police to areas. From our perspective, there's nothing going to change in the moment in relation to the current staffing numbers, whether that being in Haast, Franz Joseph, Ross. Fortunately, Hokitika have recently had an additional position number added to their staffing numbers. There's always the balance of demand over, what our demand is for our calls for service versus the number of staff required for that. And I think at the moment, from Ross South, that seems to be working quite well, with the exception of having to allow staff to go on leave. And so just being able to ensure that we have that capacity to fill gaps, because for as long as I've been here, which, on the coast, which isn't very long, so 6 years, we don't have the, I suppose what we refer to as fat in the system, to continually just supplement when people are either sick, on training, on leave. So we have to plan that very well. But in the sense of actually just resourcing, there's nothing changing in the immediate future that I could see. So there's that. When it comes to trends, or with Seaview and what's happening in Hokitika, you might be able to add.
Well, there's been a lot of...
So this is just the Seaview question or understanding.
Hi, I'm sorry for that. Like a uniform, I'm currently injured, so not really working full time. In regards to Seaview, we have seen a number of evictions from Seaview, and it's down to a bare number of residents in our residents that are, I would say, causing us minimal calls for service from our point of view. That's not to say that we've got no calls for service up there. They're talking the right talk, and they seem to be doing the right actions to minimise our attention being drawn to them. So it seems to be a downward trend, crime related, but it's hard to say. There are still some, I guess for want of a better description, undesirable people associated with the area, so that's going to have a wider impact on offending, but it's just a matter of policing it as we can.
So I think there's social issues that are sort of in and amongst all of that, which police aren't, equipped to deal with all social issues, even though we are called to respond to a lot of incidents that occur. But it seems to be a little bit up and down, isn't it, in relation to the people at Seaview?
Yeah, more serious ones definitely. On the face of it, taken it.
Just pardon my ignorance of I've heard a little of what's happening at Seaview. Are they squatters or are they legitimate tenants or residents that are just causing trouble, or is it a combination of the two?
Legitimate tenants, they're people who they've been renting the rooms to. I think that's a whole different area of expertise. It's not for us to comment on.
Legally allowed to be what they're doing.
Paying to live here, whether the standard of the living is suitable, that's not for me to comment on. But yeah, paying residents.
Yeah.
And obviously that's been minimised with them knocking down more buildings and taking on less guests, for them to get a word out there.
What was
drugs or gangs?
So I mean, drugs. There are plans to expand the wastewater testing into the Westland area, so that's definitely on the cards. However, until our I suppose the unit that does all the wastewater testing, they're upgrading. So until they've upgraded, which is occurring now until the mid to latter part of the year, the capability of taking more locations of testing is not possible. So once the renovations are done or the upgrading is done, we will be in conversations with the wastewater testing facilities to ensure that they've got the capability to actually do that. So they have to be set up with the infrastructure to be able to test that. And what that will do is actually give us a better idea holistically across the west coast around what the drug use is like. Because at the moment we just do Buller and Grey. So it will be a good thing, but maybe not so much useful for police, but more so for health and other services where we're able to kind of like manipulate or make sure that the support services are there for those people. Gangs.
Sorry, before you jump topics, so we unfortunately saw the death of a young fella last year. I won't do anything else on that, but we've seen that occasionally in Paul's papers. It's been called previously today. We see the court proceedings and things like that. Is that an issue that's stabilising? Is it going up? Is it increasing as far as you're concerned?
It's probably very stable. I think the use of MDMA is quite high from a wastewater testing, from what we're evidence-wise we're seeing from Greymouth and the Buller area. But there isn't, it doesn't seem to go like this, it just seems to be quite steady. I'm more than happy to share the wastewater testing results with you, Helen, and you can share them out with your councillors on a monthly basis when I get that. So they do methamphetamine, MDMA, cocaine, and fentanyl are what the main drugs that they test for in the wastewater testing. Having said that, we haven't had a lot of reports of problem issues in relation to that type of use, even though that seems to be within the younger demographic, the party kind of drug rather than the meth use, more than that. That was a really unfortunate circumstance.
Sorry, just an observation. I just noticed, not so sure about Greymouth, but just around in particular, a lot of both petrol stations, service street, put up highlights and stuff. Have we had any sort of ramroads, people robbing tobacco out of convenience stores, dairies, that sort of stuff on the coast, or is that just
we had one
business owners being a bit prudent because of what they're seeing elsewhere in the country?
Probably both. So we have had one at petrol station in Greymouth.
Yeah.
So from a result of that happening, we definitely were, I think, challenged down here.
Yeah, I went and asked, informed them of it, and 2 days later he had the bollards up. He went over to Christchurch and bought them and stuck them up himself.
So one of our, well, I suppose one of our responses is to actually do some prevention work around that to make sure that people were aware that what was happening, if they needed anything, what made them feel safe. And I think there was another business that I saw on the spot, the pink shop at Haroa, they put the boulders out in front of them. I mean, it's a deterrent, it won't, it doesn't stop someone. But fortunately, and there has been a jewellery shop as well in Greymouth. That was more, it was more of a smash and grab, and those offenders weren't local, they were from Christchurch.
Yeah, so like, how does it work with, I don't know, do people think, all right, we've creamed a bit of good ground over in Christchurch, we'll go over to the coast where it's easier pickings? Do you get that sort of going on?
The people responsible for the ram raid were also from Christchurch, so they were some youth here that were on holiday. So, I mean, it definitely is a avenue of, you do see offenders from Christchurch coming here and then being able to go, so, yeah.
Gangs and patches, I think was the last one.
Yeah, so gangs and patches, it's quite interesting. We did try in Greymouth, especially, and I think it may have been spoken about in some of the other business associations, but in Greymouth there was definitely a presence of differing gangs, colours, patches being worn, and the communications from the business owners were that there was some that feeling of not being safe or not being able to, if they came into the shop, you know, what were they going to do? We did try and have the signatures from all the agreement, because we can't enforce it, obviously. No. It needs to be like a bylaw enforced, so, or agreed. So we tried to have that from the business association to sort of say, hey, yeah, we'll put our signs up in our shops. But I think it wasn't 100% supported, because I think that although that it was actually wanted, there were particular shops that weren't prepared to actually do that, because again, I think of safety. It was more, if everyone did it, then it would be okay, but when it was going to be just some and not others, it was quite difficult to enforce.
Do we have it in our power under the local government actually to ban gang patches in public places, or have other districts around the country done it or not?
They have, but there's been, I think there was one, there is some case law, I'd have to double check. You can, but I think there's some contentious issue around person's bill of rights and what it is that they are allowed to and not to do. I know in Wachaweka that they tried to do that as well in their main sort of streets. It's more around like coming into the shops, but it definitely was quite intimidating for the community, you know.
There's only one reason you're wearing that patch out in public, and it's you want people to think you're tough and innocent.
Absolutely, yeah, there's definitely, you know, whether it's colours, whether it's...
Yeah, what's the definition of a patch?
The definition of a patch was...
I mean, so you've got a patch on your shoulder.
I think this conversation's been had before, maybe not here, but around the country. It's a patch, and I'd say that people would class it as a gang, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Scouts.
I know how I feel when I see a mob patch versus a police.
Yeah, but I'm just...
It's a fancy drawing.
Just legal. Just what the definition of a patch?
I don't know that I have to find out. There is a definition of a gang patch, but obviously it's an identifying feature that a club or a group of people wear to identify them from another set of
It's just like scouts or
I
girls.
suspect there's a legal case law piece that would say.
There's recognised criminal organisations though, aren't there?
Yeah.
I would imagine. Like you've got a survey of gang members that you have as a national register each year and that sort of stuff. And I doubt the Boy Scouts or the local, Boys Brigade are on there. So, yeah.
I mean, organised crime is obviously, generalised in the gang, but there are a lot of other organised crime groups that I think the police are now focusing on as well when it comes to scammers, when it comes to money laundering, when it comes to those types of things that fit on the face of it when organised crime we talk about like motorcycle gangs.
Any other questions, Councillor Neal?
Yeah, I think a few years ago, and probably at the time of Greymouth putting some signs up, we looked at it for Westland, for safer communities, and it was very much felt then that wait until it's a problem and then do something.
The problem is once they're established and they're there. Whereas I just think, without sounding harsh, if you just show that there's no tolerance for that sort of crap, they don't get a foothold and that's the end of it because they know they're not welcome again. And that is the approach that I would far rather take as a district.
And that's obviously for something for you guys to have a conversation around, that we would definitely assist or support you if that was what it is that you want to be able to do. I do know that the staff have a relatively zero tolerance for antisocial behaviour, any type of disorder, any type of disruption in the community, and I don't from my experience or from what I see, every community has people who live in it that are associated or belong to a gang. Some of them are more visible than others, and some of them are contributing members to society,
You don't get that back for doing tiddlywinks though.
Oh, you don't?
No.
I appreciate what it is that you're saying, but I know that the staff will respond when and if they have to. I don't see it as a major problem that we have, there might be some Mumble Mob, there might be some Black Power, we had the Aotea natives in Greymouth, but they kind of once they were causing issues, we put quite a good stamp on them and they are pretty much gone. We do have concerns around the likes of, say, the gangs that are in Christchurch, or like the Comancheros and the Rebels and those types of gangs, how they, if one or two of them just get here and then they get a foothold here, because I think they can sort of sleep a little bit, they can be a little bit fly under the radar, and they sort of here, or they will use people here to kind of do what they've done in Timaru and take over a gang pad or something. We just don't have anything like that.
I don't think they have so much in Westland, but there's enclaves up around Grey and that where there's cheap housing in certain places and that sort of stuff, and it's just a good place to come and set up shop. So,
And there's definitely what we call noting of that kind of thing happening, like seeing more visibility of different gangs being, when I say present, that you might have one or two who are based on the coast from a bigger gang.
Any other questions from the screen or from the floor?
Sorry.
No, I'm more than happy to come back and or provide you with some information. I'll get the wastewater testing to you. I'll have a look at what the bylaw stuff is in relation to the patches and share it with you so you have it. But I think we are in a good space. I do.
Yep. No, that's good, and I appreciate you coming in and taking your time. I know you're busy, and it is good because I do know that you guys are all over the situation, working with the police regarding solving the issues at Seaview was excellent, and actually having all the agencies together on that problem was pretty impressive. Nerida, I would also like to say I'm sorry for your injury, which I know was probably got on the job under an unpleasant circumstance. So I hope you're doing okay. And it's nice to see you smiling because it can't be easy under those circumstances. So thank you for your service, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for your presentation. Move on seconder to resolve that we accept that. Councillor Phelps, Councillor Beard, Cool, and now we'll jump on with Scott Hoare on the Hokitika protection works. He's online and join us for the presentation, and then you might get a micro for 5 minutes if you're lucky. Scott, welcome.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I was asked to present just an update on where we're at with regards to the Hokitika IRG project update. For those of you who I haven't met before, I'm Scott Hoare, work for Innova Projects and have been contracted to the West Coast Regional Council as the IRG program manager for these projects. So I thought I'd give you an update today of where things are at, and it's been great that we've been able to start some action. So out of the IRG projects, so just a bit of history, it was two projects really that was brought together for Hokitika and the shovel ready projects, and that was the seawall extension from Stafford Street to Richards Drive and the river wall projects, which was 3 separate sections from the State Highway Bridge up to past Westland Milk Products. That's subsequently been split into 2 stages. So stage 1A being the area adjacent Westland Milk Products, and stage 1B from there down to the State Highway Bridge. Stage 2 was the Canary area upstream and downstream of the bridge. And stage 3, which was the State Highway Bridge down to Sunset Point. If you could change slides for me, please. Thanks, Emma. So this is an overview looking down on the town, and you can see those areas there that I just sort of described. From there, if we could change over to the next slide. We've obviously currently working through the funding of this, which was agreed as part of the shovel ready funding, and the proposed split of the funding, and works with Kānoa MB in terms of their contribution of 3.75 million, a combination between Westland District Council and West Coast Regional Council of a contribution of $250,000 each, and then a rating district loan for the balance, which was a total funding of 6.95 million. Now, for those 2 projects, we didn't, since I've been on board, we had a quantity surveying team come on board and estimate those projects with the seawall circa about 11 million, and the other projects just over, was about 6.5 to 7 million on some high level estimates based on some very limited conceptual drawings that were available. So as part of that, we've been looking about how that would be funded, and part of one of the things that was advised at the joint committee meeting was to look at the transfer of the priorities to complete the river walls, and that's what we've been getting on with. So if you switch over the slides to our program, we're currently working through on the seawall extension. That consent has been in process and is about to be looking at that. That's going to be fully notified and go through a consultation process, and that will happen shortly. Stage 1A has commenced and in May, and that'll be looking to take us to August to complete, hopefully end of July, early August. And stage 1B is underway with the concept design. I think I've seen the preliminary design, but the concept design is just about complete, and we're just about to go into a consultation phase, particularly with the Western District Council Ops team in terms of the services, but also around Kiwi Rail and Western Milk Products in terms of how we access a few of the areas there. And also noting that we have the Whitebait Sanctuary works on the other side of the bank, so that's some of our considerations there. That we would hope then would go into construction on the completion of 1A. Hopefully we get through that consent process and the design process, that we're then into construction between September and December. Stage 2 and 3 We've been asked at the recent joint committee to just consider around stages 2 and 3 in terms of the priorities and how they were set. And some of the background information into that was that there are some additional complexities with stage 3 with regards to the heritage areas, the boat ramp, etc., and the wharf areas, that it was considered easier to do stage 2 from a construction perspective and maybe a design perspective, that could happen in parallel and be done earlier. However, making sure that we have sufficient funds to complete the projects, we're currently looking at bringing stage 3 earlier to see whether we could actually provide more protection probably to the town first as opposed to the areas up at Canary. So that's just something that we're considering there. Either way of getting into those works, we will be looking to start the survey, and we will survey both areas again, and looking at the design to commence in terms of early preliminary drawings, starting that work in June, and then going through a design and consultation period for the resource consents, which we anticipate would take us a little bit of time with that consultation, and we've estimated that would start actual physical construction works in January 2024. Sorry if I spoke too fast, but happy to open it up to the floor to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Questions from the floor? Councillor Davidson?
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. Just on the seawall, you're saying that the notification will be done shortly. Can you give us an estimated date when that would be, please?
Yeah, so I understand that will be issued next week.
Thank you very much. And the other question I had is, how much money was spent to date?
On the seawall?
No, with the funding was that you say 6950?
Yes, correct.
How much have we spent to date?
Around about 300,000 in terms of design and consenting costs. Okay. Plus, yeah, and now we've just started the stage 1A works, as that will start to receive the contractor's claims for that.
And how much was that, Scott?
That was circa around 2 million for that particular piece of the work.
Okay. All right, thank you, Scott.
Anything else from the screen? No, get off easy this time, Scott. Thank you very much.
Thank you, team. No problems.
Seconder to accept that presentation. Councillor Beard, Councillor O'Neill, thank you very much. All in favour?
Thank you, Scott.
Cool. Thank you.
We're just going to have a quick 5-minute cuppa break and toilet break. We will be at 3:28.
Caught up. Yay. Yay. Right. Oh, God. Oh. Oh, man. Jeepers. I beat them across the front. Yes. And then I heard the roll thing was even.
It'll be Amy. I'm the old queen. I'm Mary Ann, the old queen. Just showing Amy.
He likes the names.
Are you going to win? Yeah. Yes. Yes, yes, we will. No, because I do share. Yeah, good job. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so they really provide a plugin. We'll see you tomorrow. Yes, yes. Yeah. Yes, so. You can be able to do the screens and all sorts. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yes, especially the bears. Yeah. Yeah. All right. See you tomorrow. Right, actually, he's given us 5 minutes to the toilet. Okay. I'll just have a coffee here next to it. I'll just, I saw them before. Oh, how about that? Well, I'll just, let me just go to the toilet. And you need to go to the toilet, probably. I don't know why they made it 140 in,
Oh, how the hell I blow that up? That's on mute. I'm on, oh no.
Cody and the financial performance report. Just before we start, are you back on the rest of this? Cool. Cody.
Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor and Councillors. Through Deputy Mayor, I present the financial report to April 2023. I'll take it as read. Now, through Deputy Mayor, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions on the floor? Councillor Lee.
Page 65 of the agenda, which is Appendix 1. Just clarify what's happening with the debt. Our debt's gone down in April, May.
Yes, that's right. In April, we had a loan that was repaid, and there was also a term deposit that was linked to this loan. There was $3 million repaid there.
And the increase in June is just still the absentee.
Yes, that's right. We also expect to raise a loan of $2 million in June.
Page 68. It looks like a budgeted Beach Street stormwater realignment. What's that project all about?
I'm sorry, I didn't have anything to do with the capital report, so I'll get back to you on that. I'll speak with my management accountant and as well.
Are you referring to the stormwater, page 68?
Yes.
Yes, you got the stormwater on, you've got the stormwater on.
Yeah, I heard, yes, that's, I'm just wondering if it's to do with connecting parts of the Beach Street by the car park onto the stormwater along.
It's an investigation. It's an investigation funding, really. That project, if we did do stormwater line right down the Beach Street, it's a big. And it's also been utilised to connect the new developments in there around that.
Yeah, there's been discussions that Councillor Davison and I have had with some of the affected parties, and was investigating some possible solutions to the stormwater issue. I saw that pop up and I thought, oh, well, what's happening?
I'd like it to be that too.
Yeah, well, that's conceptually what we considered it could happen for.
That's right.
Well, struck you might be safe for this one. Cody, there's a couple of claims against West Coast Water Australia there. I was just keen to hear, and there's a deflect to your left around the damages done by vandalism and the cost implications to council on that. Are we up for insurance claims only, or are we funding that, or is lovely community members who do the time and moving money and goods covering that cost?
Well, I don't know of any insurance premiums that are paying for the cycle trail, so I can't speak for anything to
There's no insurance for the plastic trailers, right?
So the two referrals of recent damages that come out online, or is that been taken up?
It depends, Simon, you know more about.
So anything to do with weather claims is obviously 100% payable, right?
That is correct. Any damage in that, we wait for prosecutions. We were lucky enough, we got a community group help replace the one south. The other one, we didn't manage to get prosecution on, so it's back. Otherwise, it just comes out of the operational budget.
So, yeah, that's how we work.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else from anyone else? Friday Medwick.
Through the chair, the sustainability report on page 10. Some of those figures aren't so flash. This time of the year is going to be a surplus of $3 million, turned into a $700,000 deficit. Expenditure was going from 24 million turned into 27, so it's up 27%. And the revenue at the same time was going to be 27, but the net effect was 26, so it's 5% less than what was budgeted.
Yes, from what I understand, we are behind on many of our grant claims. The one particular grant claim of $1.2 million we're behind on, we received that yesterday. And so I imagine that will bring us back in line. That was something that could have been claimed by the end of April. That's been, yeah, so it's just been received now in May.
Any further questions from anybody else? Not from the screen?
All good, thank you.
This is just a broader question, but our page 62, after rates, our largest source of income is grants and subsidies, 23%, which I don't know, roughly 6.25 million. What do we spend most of that on? This is probably more a question for the floor, but is there large sort of clear cost items as to what that goes towards or not?
So there's been, through the chair, there's been a number of subsidies over the last 3 years, particularly starting with shovel-ready money, EGF prior to that. So we've been successful on a number of projects, mostly large infrastructure projects. But when you talk about the big projects that we've been successful on, with the old Christchurch Road resealing, Con Street, we can give you a summary of all these. We provided as a summary update to council in their first meeting. But the swimming pool, about 4.4 million there. Carnegie, considerable amount of funding from there. The Butler's landfill, which is a massive one, which obviously is a relocation of Fox Glacier landfill, and actually was quite a windfall really when you consider the cost of relocating what has already been put in the ground.
Yeah.
So there's a number of elements, but we can get a full summary of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering how much was just run-of-the-mill stuff, like whatever we get from NZTA each year towards our rating and that sort of stuff, versus what was sort of extraordinary sort of spending items and sort of stuff. That's all.
Yeah, the NZTA is a fixed value for the 3 years in a row, so that's all 100% payable.
Yeah.
Those additional funding opportunities we've chased when they came available.
Yeah.
It's been quite I think it's about $30 million funded.
If there's nothing else, a mover and a seconder to receive that. Councillor Neal, Councillor Gillett, all in favour? Thank you very much, Cody. And we'll welcome Scott to the floor to talk about the update on Better Off funding transplant projects.
Hello. I'm taking the report as read. As you can see, we've started the Better Off transplant funding projects. It's well underway. I'll take questions. Or listen to training.
That's how we all feel about tranche 2.
Cricket. Through the chair, Scott, there's a lot of community groups just that I've been involved with where there's still no agreements and things signed, or no follow-up, or conversations where they've been told that they've been sent the agreement and haven't got the agreement, or haven't seen the agreement, or how are we getting on with getting all those signed?
Well, what I'll do after this, if that's all right, we can have a good chat with that. As you know, and because we've got somebody overseeing it from our end, so if there's any gaps.
Cool. Nothing else from anyone else? Great input from the train driver. If there's not a mover and a seconder to receive that report, I will take Councillor Phelps' second as a move. Anybody else? Councillor Durden. Thank you, Scott.
It happens every time.
Simon, Stafford Cemetery.
Good afternoon again, councillors.
The purpose of this report is obviously to determine the future of Stafford Cemetery and ask the council to provide direction for staff. As you probably realise, within the report, council attempted to close the Stafford Cemetery back in around about 2000, but never followed through on doing that process. Since then, we've had obviously a number of volunteer groups and organisations that have transformed the Stafford Cemetery to what was a derelict, unkept cemetery to what is now quite a peaceful and beautifully well maintained cemetery. So I would just like to thank, on behalf of council, all of those organisations mentioned in the report, and also highlight the work that the Anthea Keenan family has also done. Once again, acknowledging the work John Houston does in terms of maintaining it to a very high standard. A few years ago, myself, Bob Brennan, operations manager, and a few others from council met Charlie Cowie and members of the Heritage Hokitika group out of the cemetery and walked through the history. What I'd like to do now is just play the recording that we had on today, and they'll come back to the rest of the report, if that's okay. So Eva's going to play it for you.
Hey Charlie. So what you look over there is the Presbyterians. They all came from, mainly from the Scottish Highlands after Highland clearances.
The road in between?
Yep, so the road comes straight down the
top
middle
of the
here. Crucifix? Yep. This over here is the Wesleyan section, so the old Methodists. Most of them came from sort of Devon and Cornwall, sort of low-grade coal and smuggling areas. Down over here, down towards the old section, is the Anglican section. Again, a lot of these came from the more hard-up areas of England, north of England and Lancashire and what have you, like the Seddons and what have you. And then over on the left-hand side here, you've got the Catholic section. Most of the names in there are either Irish or Italian, but the thing is, they're not. Most of them aren't actually Italian. They're Italian Swiss from Canton Ticino, which was the poorest part of Switzerland. Only Italian-speaking Canton there, and of course the Irish all turned up here hunting the gold after the Irish famine, the potato famine back in the mid 1800s.
There was a snapshot of the visit. We spent quite a bit of time up there with the group and walking through and understanding the history. So it's quite a I would say, a memorable experience. A number of elements were raised during that visit that we were asked to consider as part of council. I asked Charlie Cowie to actually formalise it in a report to council, which is a part of the appendix you'll see today. A number of those elements, and I just want to highlight some of them. Talked about fencing to secure the site, both internally and externally. At the back of the cemetery is quite a bit of boggy ground, and there is no physical parking that is made available to the cemetery. Those that have been there will identify that there's a very, very steep gradient up to the cemetery, and parking cars there is quite fraught with danger and very constrained. Particularly if council decide to make it available to future burials. So there is an area at the back of the site that could be converted into parking. The main causeway down through to the back of the cemetery has a corresponding right angle crucifix concept. There is a request to also look at line chip to make that quite visible from the air, and obviously show it and for its true worth. Interpretation panel, obviously we have a very similar one at Kamara Cemetery, and the request there is that council allow them to proceed with developing an interpretation panel. A few other items which will be in the report as well. Just to note that the cedar, or the Japanese cedar, is actually now included as part of the GTP notable trees and is identified as a very important tree for the area. So we went out and sought feedback from organisations and stakeholders that had an invested interest in the area, and all are very positive and supportive of maintain it at a minimum, but requesting council consider keeping it as an open cemetery. To do so would require us to validate those identified sections within the report that state there's potentially room for further burial plots. So we would have to use ground penetrating radar to do that work. It is available. It is quite common now. It used to be quite rare, but it's quite common to get that work. I put a provisional cost of around 15,000. I don't have a quoted price for that until we decide we want to proceed. But just to highlight, if for council, there is we do have $15,000 in this year's CapEx budget. And the focus on there was to make it primarily safe, which would include external fencing, which has been identified in the report, and potentially look at the work at the back of the site to reinforce that.
Sorry, Simon,
Sorry.
include or exclude the fencing?
Includes the fencing.
Simon, that 15,000 you just mentioned, I just missed what that was for. What was that you said it would cost to do?
So based on the feedback from the report, there's a couple of safety elements that we thought we should address, which is the fencing around the external side of the cemetery.
Yeah, then you said 15,000 for something else. Was that to do with?
That's included in that. So 15,000 would cover the fencing and cover the groundworks at the back of the site, and potentially the tree arborist as well. That requires to get machinery down the back.
So did you also mention the use of something to see where there were potential burial sites that aren't marked? Was that part of that as well?
Yeah, that's an operational cost. We would have to do that as well. But potentially, there would be an additional cost. So I just want to run through what those additional costs would be.
Yep.
So currently we have volunteers that service the cemetery on council's behalf. That we don't have a current MOU with them, and they're carrying that cost themselves. I don't think that's fair. I suggest that council looks at covering at the minimum the cost of the works to do that. If that volunteer work was removed, an estimate around $7,000 would cost a contractor to do that work, and also around $7,500 to do the ground penetrating radar. So approximately, looking at that, is so it's around $25,000 approximately of additional work to maintain it over a year. Well, the 15,000 ground rate will be a one-off cost. So I take the rest of the report as read and open up for discussion.
Questions or comments? Councillor Billy?
I'm going to challenge the report. There are some possible errors or inaccuracies in it. So there's some factual issues concerning when it was opened, how many were actually buried there, and whether the cemetery's actually been considered closed. But the main issue really is to do with the location of the plots. Yeah. All the plots apparently are mapped and located. There was some work done some years ago, apparently, transcribing paper-based records to digital, and there was some sort of malfunction, but that's been resolved. So Charlie's fixed that. So all the burial sites are located, and there's a file sitting at the museum which identifies exactly where all the plots are located. They also investigating using GPR with the police, and they were told by the police that it's a waste of time. It will not detect anything due to the age of those remains. So there probably is no need needs to be further work on this. There's no probable need to look at GPR, and we need to look at this data that's held at the museum and make sure it's consistent. But really, all the plots are known. The black area that's in that appendix There's known who's buried there, but not exactly which plot they are in. In the Anglican section, there's only, I think, 2 graves, which they don't know which who is in which area. The rest of the cemetery has been mapped and located. So it's not likely that we need to spend much money on doing any identification work. So we need to have a relook at that.
Can we take those 2 as action points, Simon? To go away and check the
museum
documentation as well as reconfirming the value or ability of achieving anything with the GPR?
If I do have concerns about unnotified burials, so we can't say that have all been actually registered. That's my concern, and would be concern of staff as well.
I'd agree that could be a huge risk that we don't start digging up.
So as part, just through the chair, as part of the work, we would go through and once again establish and revalidate that paperwork or those identified plots. Plus, I would like to have assurance that the area we are actually allocating towards further plots, if we kind of keep it open, that there aren't any potential unmarked graves there.
Because that potential area is the access way to the old sports ground. It's not down the middle of the Anglican. Yeah.
Which is the most logical solution.
The other area I just want to comment on is the cost to do this remedial work, based on the fact that there's obviously strong group support for doing work at that cemetery. There's things like that car park area at the back of the Wesleyan section, which needs gravel. Well, it's quoted at $45 a cubic metre, I think. This could be, I think, that could be done for as low as $13. The limestone cost is $2.40. You can get that locally, $80 a cubic metre.
We'll do it as cheap as we can.
Anyway, I guess the comment is that there's we should explore it. The arborist fee could be $400 if that's still required. So not to identify that tree. So the project cost could be a lot lower than indicated in the report. I think the only issue is really that the majority of the plots are known, and we can review that data to make sure it's valid. I guess the only issue is being raised about unknown burials.
In order of hands up, Councillor Phelps, Kai Whakahaere Medwick, and then Councillor Davidson, and then we'll run with others. Councillor Phelps.
What would be, you've got 2 recommendations here. Number 2, direct staff to formally close the cemetery. What would the process, if we were to formally close the cemetery, what would the cost and process involved be?
There's no real cost, it's just staff time.
Yeah. Now, if we close it, does that just mean that people are no longer able to be buried there, or does that mean that we no longer have custody of them, we'll invest it with a group or something like that? Would it still be under our umbrella as some form of park or
It's an
reserve?
obligation to maintain.
Yeah.
And it's still been an obligation to maintain it whether it's open or closed.
Right.
It's in perpetuity.
To be reinvested when there is a reserve in the ground.
Right, so you can't invest it with the Stafford Cemetery Incorporated Society or something like that? If you know, you'd have to make that incorporated society, but is that a path you could go down or not?
That is a path. We have a number of other cemeteries managed by our partners.
Yeah.
Once again, you'd have to still validate that what's made available are still able to be utilised.
Right. No, just want to clarify our options, so thank
Kai
you.
Whakahaere Medwick.
Yeah, I think the last time that this came before the council, Charlie was talking about potentially opening up an area at the back of the current cemetery for new plots, rather than inside the historic cemetery.
Based on the report, there are 2 options. There is the one, as Councillor the letter stated, which is the section through to the reserve ground. I'm not sure if you've got a visual there. Page 81. The two at the back are the sign and the blue sites. Probably the back half of those both are where they're proposing to put potentially parking. But there is potential for those. We'll have to once again do the ground penetrating radar to make sure there's nothing there that would be affected.
I don't have a view really, except that I do agree that there's a danger that we don't know everything in 2023. There is a danger that you can start digging merely and think that you're in a clear spot, and all of a sudden you're on top of someone's eternal rest.
Correct.
And
I never want to see.
I wouldn't want that on my conscience. And I do think it's a risk that has to be addressed first. As I said, I don't have a view either way about whether or not it stays open, but the as for the ground penetration, I don't agree with Councillor Gillette on that, because the ground penetration was done at Arahura Park. It was Canterbury University come in and did this a number of years ago, and it was very accurate. And some of those have been just as long, if not longer, than Stafford Cemetery. So it does have its value, and the cost of that vote is the question for me. But given, I don't see what the rush is, to be honest. I mean, given that the last inhabitants are there for an eternity, what's the rush? What's the rush? I think we should just get it right first, and if that means we have to find the money, I mean, we've just been splashing money around like nobody's business. With the $200,000, $200,000 that went from that so-called Better Off funding to develop an app in Hokitika. You could have used some of that money for this to pay for the ground penetration, whatever else is required. But instead, we're looking to scratch around to find funds to be able to do it. And I just don't think it's well thought out. And I would prefer to just tie hold, take a step back, do that work. I'm not saying that all of that background work that Charlie and Charlie in particular has done isn't valuable, because it is. And the history that's been assembled for that is incredible. But as I said, we don't know everything, yeah, I just think we need to treat carefully.
Yes, thank you. First of all, the status. What's the status?
It's currently not closed.
Like reserve or
council property.
No.
It's not closed.
Yeah, but it's open. Is it?
We're not actively leading people to be buried there.
Yeah. So what's, I mean, like the historic reserve, or is it just, what's the status of it? And the lines that you got there, what, is that are they the true boundary lines, or?
In terms of Appendix 1?
On page 81?
Page 85 has the actual, if you look at the page 85, which is Appendix 1, has the, there's the formal boundary lines.
Okay then, yeah. So that's...
and it is a reserve cemetery.
It's reserved?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the only comment that I would make is that you need to carefully go through and inspect it, make sure that there's no other graves there. I know down at the Ross, at the cemetery down there, when I was building tracks and that down there back in the dog days, they thought that they fenced the area where the cemetery was, and then started to sort of track along a bit further, and then come across, some stones, headstones and stuff like that. So I agree with Paul, just sort of saying that, let's take our time and just carefully go through and make sure that we're done right.
Milash.
Thank you. I've just got one thing, well, a couple of things. Page 79, the report concludes by recommending that council resolve to either keep the Stafford Cemetery open with an associated budget or direct staff to formally close the cemetery. But then on page 81, we're talking about future burials. So to me, if you're going to keep the cemetery open so people can go in and visit, have the, get that historical information, that's one thing. But to open it up for continued burial is another thing with a different set of costs. So I kind of see this as being a little bit blurry at this stage because of that. I think we've got several decisions to make here. One is, how do we regard this cemetery? Should it have future burials there, being that it is a cemetery full of history? Do we undermine that by starting to do more burials there? Or do we keep it in its present self and leave the ground undisturbed and recognise the history that's there with the information panels and the associated costs that go with those individual aspects? Because for me, it's not a matter of does it stay open or close. It's a matter of if it's opening and going to have further burials, that's a different set of equations again and a different thought process. The other thing I did note in 3.73, page 80, the line chip, the main road and crosspath, when viewed from above, it's a shape of a crucifix. Well, none of us actually fly above the site to go and visit, and I think that's a very expensive aspect of what would look very nice, but it doesn't really fit with something that's ancestral grounds. So I think there's a bit more work to do on this, and I think actually we need to take it back to the drawing board and actually look at what is the plan for that going forward. Do we see more burials being done there? Is it just going to be closed to future burials but open to the public to visit, or what? I mean, to me, it's not just a matter of does it stay open or closed, do we throw money at it or not. There's a bit more thought. This is a cemetery after all.
Chair, that's why I'm asking council to provide direction today.
I know, but I mean, so, if we say, look, let's leave it open, at what stage does the conversation come into it about do we allow more burials there? Because that's a different set of sums on the cost to run it.
Councillor Neil was next. Do you have a comment?
Obviously, we went out to the various organisations that showed an interest in the site, and all of them have supported future burials being there. So what I'm doing is providing the information for councillors to consider. At a minimum, we could just provide funding to maintain the grounds and draft an MOU with the organisation that's overseeing that work. Like I said, we have a capital funding to do some fencing. We could just leave it at that, and then the other option is to give Heritage Hokitika the approval to proceed with the interpretation panel at no cost to council. But there's things we can do now and defer any other works until councillors consider this in more detail. In the interim, I can provide a secondary report which provides a breakdown for both elements.
Thank you, Simon. Do we know what the perception is out there as far as having new burials there? I mean,
well, that's what I asked for feedback on from them. Is no supportive of continuing to put burials there.
Expanding the ground that's currently available to make it larger so we can have more sites there.
It's within the same footprint. There's an area that's been identified as with no plots on it at the moment that we would have to validate that's available for burials.
And that's clear of timber or growth or anything, it's bare land?
Yeah. It's on your map on page...
It's in the Anglican section.
Page 81.
Very too much, it's strong.
Catholics is
Anything else from you, Helen? Councillor Neil?
Yeah, Paul, you said that the GPR was totally reliable. How do you know without digging up the bits that it didn't say? How can you tell that that ground penetration thing, how can you tell that it is reliable? Because, okay, you use it and it goes, yeah, there's one there, one there, one there, but if you don't dig up these bits, how do you know?
Well, I'm not a scientist, but my understanding is that it's basically an X-ray of the ground, and it showed when there's been ground disturbance and the skeletons, they clearly show up. Only 6 foot under, they clearly show it.
So the idea, if there was disturbance in the ground, you just don't go there. Yeah, you don't go validate it, you just don't go there.
Yeah. Which is why I think that it would be safer, through the chair, safer to, if there was going to be new burials in the area that Charlie was talking about last time, which was outside of the historic, but right next door. I think that would be safer there, but I do think it needs a lot more thought.
The mine shafts are nearby, and that's why it would be good to do the fencing. What is nearby? Is it like 5 metres? Is it?
I don't have the details for that. So.
It'd be quite good to know because it's a long way away. I think it's
Councillor Phelps.
Oh, it's a good one.
No,
age before we.
So you probably just go 5 feet and put a topsoil on top. That will be safe.
Which is what they're doing now, isn't it?
Councillor Burden.
I fully support the line chipping of the paths, the tidying up, fencing, a maintenance budget to look after it and keep it tidy. My concerns are around new burials and the issue with the ground. I mean, get that all sorted and have complete confidence that, you know, we're not going to be digging up just remains. It's just going to sink it. As far as I'm concerned, the only other issue is if we do go down the track of new burials, what is the real cost of a burial out there? Do these, or, you know, other cemeteries line up with Stafford, are the costs increased? And we have to come up with some sort of plan about, are we putting in berms out there for headstones and those other costs as well, rather than just ad hoc burials in that sort of area. So if it's going to be done, it needs to be done properly as far as I'm concerned. And I think we progress on the maintenance, the tidying up, and the crucifix line chip. I love all that, but we need to do a lot more investigation into the opening or closing and new burials. That's my opinion.
Through the chair, just a bit of side information, they mentioned that the trees are now notifiable. If it becomes protected and it can be certain status of notifiable, you're not allowed to work within a root zone, and that road that's in there is right to get into the cemetery, so it's right through the root zone. So there could be a future issue with being able to get access for vehicles or whatever through that particular area.
Can a plan change fix that?
Sorry?
Can you make a plan change for that particular tree?
If it's been notified or it's protected, then you can't.
It's not protected currently, but it is proposed to be protected.
Is that by our plan or by the RMA?
By our plan,
so we
through the district plan. The new district plan is proposing to protect it, which has to be endorsed.
Sorry, join the queue again, Councillor Phelps.
Couple of things. So, yeah, I just think the risk associated with new burials and things like that is, you know, aside from the potential cost of the ratepayer and all this sort of stuff, just the risk associated is massive, and I think we'd be better off to close it and have it as a piece of history or a museum or what have you, whether that's owned by the council or whether we put it into the custody of a community group or an corporate society or something like that could be preferable. And if they wanted to run new burials at their own risk, I think that could occur. But I just think there's I just think, you know, if I took, for example, from our trip down South Westland, there were some really good community owned and run cemeteries and that sort of stuff, and that is a model that does work very well, and I don't see why that model couldn't work for Stafford as well. I mean, it's just another thing that we're going to have to do.
Can I ask that Don just explains how the model works at the Monterey?
Yes, so we have a pretty motivated cemetery committee.
that oversees the maintenance of the Horo Cemetery. Of course, a lot of us have a vested interest in the cemetery, so yeah, it's a really good model. We do apply for funding from council, for some upkeep as well, but a lot of the work that's done there is voluntary, but we do have a cemetery. But even we are trustees on there.
Just to clarify, the burials are managed by the committee as well.
Cool. And just back to the long list.
Oh, just very quickly, and I don't know about spending money on a crucifix, just finally, because I mean, we're a secular country and I don't really think public money should be put towards anything.
We don't. Just through the chair, we have to sort the causeway out. I think we could do that as a primary function.
This issue of Councillor Phelps of perhaps handed over to the community to run, I think, is pretty expensive. This is a pioneer cemetery, and you can't just do that. And there are half Tikahi relatives that are in that cemetery, and I just find it reprehensible. But as for yes, there are private cemeteries that are run on our own. Awahudu, another one, Bruce Bay, Māori Cemetery. They all run successfully like that. But there are rules around all of this. And the further comment is about that tree. I understood that in the TTPP, the historic trees, the heritage trees, took immediate effect, the same as sites of significance to Māori, and the vicinity plan was notified.
Okay, we need to take advice on that. But it isn't, I know that the tree is actually in the community plan.
That was so that people couldn't take liberties with the chainsaw.
Yes. Okay, I'll validate.
Councillor Gilley.
Just the comment was that potentially that strip in the middle of the Anglican, assuming it is clear, which my information suggests it is, but anyway, there's potentially 60 plots. So there's a revenue potential there, maybe 100, 120k, depending on the value of the plots.
Councillor Burden.
No, my question got no longer exists.
Councillor Medwick.
Sorry, don't belabor the point, but I just want to reinforce what the comment that Her Worship made as well, that the historic aspect of the cemetery. And that shouldn't be underestimated either. And to put new burial plots in the middle of ancient burial ground kind of sits uncomfortably with me. I don't mind the idea of having opening, to the side, as was discussed firstly, but in the middle, it would be like going up to Hokitika Cemetery and in the old part of Hokitika Cemetery and opening up a new plot in there for modern burials. It just doesn't sit right, and that's aside from all of the issues with the ground penetration. But I don't have any issue at all with opening a new area alongside that, not in the historic.
Yep. Absolutely agree with that. Absolutely.
Remember, whatever ownership model we pursue, I would agree with that.
Nothing else from anyone else? Sorry, it's a public meeting, not a public forum, Charlie.
Hey, can I jump in quickly here? Can I suggest that we just approve to get for management to deal with the health and safety issues if there's any, and then management come back with some options around this. We've been talking about this for too long.
Yep. Team to agree with you there. So looking for someone to move and second the report as received. Councillor Phelps.
Happy to.
Cool. And then obviously we've got the other motion there around options 1 and options 2 being received. I'm getting a read of the room that people aren't happy to proceed with either of those at this stage based on the information. Is that correct?
Can you say it again, please, Ashley?
I'm getting a read of the room that there's a fair amount of difference around options 1 and options 2 and the preferred way forward. So my feel is that we'd be sending the staff back to do some further work and come back to us at a later meeting. Unless anyone wants to query or challenge that, that would be my take on it.
I'll be happy to pass option 2, but not get off until the
I'll second that.
Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, please. No, I'll second that, what he's saying. Yep. Number 2.
Yeah.
Sorry, so I could not hear what Patrick said. Can you please repeat that? Because I've got no idea what was said.
We have 3 in favour of option 2. Councillor Phelps was happy to move option 2. Councillor Davidson and Councillor Lanier have also shown support of that.
You put the motion to the floor, have you?
I just did, I guess.
Yes, it says.
Can I put a motion forward that we follow through from what Francois just said before?
The one that's just been tabled. So we've got 3 in favour of option 2. Anybody else willing to support or oppose the motion of Councillor Phelps?
I just want to comment. I personally, I think that's premature. I think we should let the chief executive go away and make some inquiries, and it could take some time. And as I said, it's a rush. But do it properly and then come back. I think it would be, it would go against the wishes of all those groups that canvassed in the first place. And I just think it would be of disservice to make the decision to close it now when we know that there is a strong lobby to keep it open in some fashion.
Yes.
Councillor Neal?
Yeah, well, I do agree that to close it, my concern is the community groups that have been doing all the work that want it kept open. So because of that, I can't vote for closing it yet.
Okay, so currently 3-1 if we're looking at a vote.
I think maybe Councillor Davidson misunderstood my motion.
I think he did.
Yeah, I've changed my mind.
So we have a move and a second for the motion from Councillor Phelps and Councillor Manera. Is anybody in favour or not?
I think we maybe need to make sure that people are clear on what option 1 and option 2 was.
That's right.
Okay, as per page 82 of the agenda, I've got it on 82. Option 1, the Stephen Cemetery remains open and operates as other council operated cemeteries. Option 2, the council resolves to close the cemetery permanently, and then obviously there's a sub option of that around the formal process to do that. Councillor Phelps moved the motion in favour of option 2 and Councillor Manera seconded that. I'm going to read the room, that's probably not going to fly, so we probably need to go to a vote. Numbers. To show the cards. Councillor Phelps.
Well, I've already voted.
No, I'm sorry, I'm struggling to hear the conversation, so it's blinking hard to know I'm going to be part, understand when there's a vote coming, what should be done.
There's a vote coming, and based on the fact we've had a motion moved and seconded. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Cool, and so going around the room to get the support of that motion to move or not, based on my read of the room, it might not, but we have to go around the room. So Councillor Phelps is in favour, Councillor Beard?
Option 1 at this, yeah.
That's not option 1 until it's in favour of option 2.
Yes or no?
So option 2.
No.
No.
Yes.
No. So that leaves 5-2. Motion.
I don't think you're in that one.
Don't agree.
Well, so there's 6-2, so that one doesn't fly. To Helen's second motion that was going to go over the top of that. Helen, if you want to lay your motion now, please.
I just, we're very, I mean, even with those that are against it, there's mixed emotions in there, and I just think this does need more discussion. I think perhaps we look at, as Francois just said, look at the health and safety aspect of it, look at what has to be done, no matter whether it stays opened or closed. And we set that path, and this has got to come back to the table. I would like to move a motion that we receive the report and bring this back for further discussion upon certain work being done going forward.
The report's already been received. We moved that one, so it'll just be around the motion of bringing it back to a meeting. Helen's moved that. Is there a seconder in that? Yeah. All in favour? Aye. Abstentions? Against? Motion passes. Thank you, Simon. Leslie, confirmation of appointment to the Risk and Assurance Committee.
report is to confirm the appointments to the Risk and Insurance Committee. I have the report is in there.
Questions or comments from the floor? Cool. There's two motions here, one for the report we received, and no one seconded that, please. Councillor Beard, Councillor Neil, and the second that council confirms the amended appointment of Councillor Neil to the Risk and Assurance Committee and the removal of Councillor Gillett from the Risk and Assurance Committee for the remainder of the 2022-2025 training. A mover and seconder, please. Councillor Beard and Councillor Gillett. In favour? Thank you. Motion carries. Lindsay, do you want to stay for the administrative resolution as well? The administrative resolution.
Yeah, the administrative resolution is to change signatories on the ANZ banking mandate. Because obviously we have to have two people sign off on any banking transaction or loan or swap function. And we've only got two on the mandate at the moment. If somebody's off, we're stuck. So we just need to get a third person on there and remove somebody who's already left.
I'm happy to move that if someone's happy to second it.
I'm happy to second that.
All in favour? Thank you very much. Now I would need a mover and a seconder to move into publicly excluded. Councillor Phelps, Councillor Gillett, thank you very much to everyone joining us in the auditorium and online. We just have a quick time.